The story begins with something that happened to the world. Not tectonic shifts, volcanic eruptions, or anything like that, but monsters. Out of nowhere, they started appearing across the world, pushing humanity to the brink of extinction. What caused their appearance was the Tower, the mysterious place that granted power and authority to the monsters. People called it either the demonic tower or the divine tower. The reason was due to a god who proclaimed that everything one desired could be found within it, and that whoever could climb the tower would have all their wishes granted if they could face and overcome its challenges. It was a gigantic tower with 999 floors, ruled by gods and demons. Governments around the world tried to prevent people from going near it. However, no one could stop people from challenging it. Just as the demons had declared, those who tried to stop others from challenging the tower would be punished. It has now been 5 years since billions of people began focusing on the tower. The protagonist says it's finally time to try to conquer floor 600 for the first time. Inside the tower, it's full of monsters and an attack is launched, causing a massive explosion and burning everything around. The Necromancer asks how the Nine Stars dare to try stopping him. The Nine Stars ask what he thinks he's doing. They, among millions of challengers, are those who rose above all. Using magic and divine energy they earned inside the tower and unmatched power, one of the men warns his team to be careful because the Necromancer is now unstable. The protagonist unleashes his power and asks how they dare, saying he never thought they'd try to stop his noble acts, and warns them not to think this will end with just their defeat. He is the star known as the Black Star or the End Star. He wasn't a weapon master or a superhuman, but he was the one who surpassed the Nine Stars and claimed the title of the strongest. Chajinhyuk. The Necromancer commands his undead to rise and skeletons emerge from the ground. He is the man who brings the end, the epitome of finality, the greatest Necromancer. The protagonist says this is perfect. He was getting bored of this peace nonsense. Now all he needs is to grow stronger, and he'll use them all as summoned beasts to become the strongest. The Nine Stars say they knew he betrayed humanity and sided with evil. Cha laughs and mocks the idea of betrayal, telling them to stop talking nonsense. The team leader, holding a book and surrounded by mana, says there's no choice and orders his men to defeat him. Although Jin betrayed and attacked the Nine Stars in his thirst for power, the battle begins. The Nine Stars unleash magic, causing a massive explosion. Hyuk demands to know how they dare, but he couldn't defeat the Nine Stars alone. The team closes in to eliminate him, telling him to accept punishment for betraying humanity. The Necromancer grits his teeth. He is the one who betrayed humanity for power and is hit squarely. However, this was the story the world knew. But in truth, he didn't betray humanity. He was betrayed by the Nine Stars. 8, actually. And this fact was hidden from the world. 10 years have passed since that incident. Somewhere else, a sink is full of dirty dishes with flies buzzing around and someone grumbling under a blanket saying he'll be back. 9 stars, and cursing them. He looks around and thinks it worked. His secret skill really worked. Soul transmission. At the brink of death, this spell lets you send your soul into a compatible body. The protagonist keeps thinking that it seems like he found a body with a similar physical condition and assumes he's still in South Korea. Those damn 9 stars. He was about to finish floor 600 alone with ease. He wonders if they offered help only to betray him, and remembers when he was wounded, with many swords piercing his body. Cha asked why, and they asked if he really wanted to know why he was betrayed. They were sure he couldn't summon anything on that sacred ground. Carmen said that although he was called a one-man army, when it came to just him alone, he was nothing compared to them and asked if he agreed. Jin said he was just trying to help them. Kane told him not to take it personally. It's not like they hated him. They were just cleaning up the group. Hyuk asked about Choi and whether that bastard was involved. Pelin answered that his friend and the combat star, Choi, decided not to take part in the expedition. The Necromancer said they didn't tell him anything because they feared Choi would help him and realized they got him. His vision started to blur. He had lost too much plasma. And he accepts that he lost and is going to be eliminated, but tells them not to think this will be the end. He'll come back much stronger and calls them damn traitors. The protagonist keeps thinking he will get revenge for this until he's finally eliminated. In real time, Cha is visibly irritated, thinking they better wait for him, because he won't just turn them into his summoned beasts. He'll crush their souls and stop them from reincarnating. The phone starts ringing. Jin looks at it, picks it up, and thinks it's been a while since he used one. But this one seems fun to mess with. Then he looks surprised and asks if it's 2023 and if 10 years have passed. He thinks it feels like yesterday, but it's already been 10 years, and wonders what kind of ability this is. Hyuk questions the ability and wonders if he can use magic with this body. A fly moves and he catches it, killing it with his hands. Taking a deep breath with the fly in hand, he says, "Rise." And the phone responds with possible search results for Rise. The Necromancer, now annoyed, keeps repeating the command and realizes there's not a drop of mana in this body. Looking outside, he says that means he'll need to climb the tower without using any abilities. The protagonist picks up the phone again and asks if 10 years really passed. Did they manage to reach the top? He searches the phone and sees a news headline saying Choi reached floor 800. Cha wonders if those bastards only advanced 200 floors in 10 years. He thinks this is his chance. While they're slacking off, he can surpass them and get revenge. Jin grabs his shirt and thinks there's no point in training outside the tower. He needs to go there now. Even if this body is a beginner, he has the knowledge of the end star and will use everything he knows to grow stronger. And the 9 stars better be ready. He's coming for revenge. At the tower entrance in Seoul, Hyuk walks up to it. People comment that whoever clears the tower will get rich, and someone asks if he really thinks he can do it, since he might get eliminated on the first floor. The Necromancer thinks of it as a place where stories and hopes gather, the tower. Elsewhere, there's a tomb inside some stairs, and within it, a skull. Someone thinks, he's finally back. Someone else runs through a forest, a girl with tears in her eyes, while another flips a coin and thinks about the name Cha. Somewhere else, a beast stands still, and a man with horns thinks he'll make sure everyone knows who he is. He watches quietly. Back at the tower entrance, a system notifies that it's 1 p.m. and the tower is now open. Voices say it's open and to focus. People rush in. The protagonist, calm, thinks his revenge is beginning. They enter, and the door closes. Cha steps into a circle, and the system notifies him with a welcome. Jin thinks it's already been 10 years. More notifications appear, welcome to the tutorial. Hyuk thinks, tutorial my ass, and wonders if there isn't a place with a harder difficulty. He thinks it's a trap-filled path that'll take days to finish, and people say that within the first 10 floors, this one is the most boring. Notifications announce the objective. Reach the destination by passing through all the traps. All damage will be healed upon reaching the goal or returning to the start. The Necromancer thinks he needs to check this body's stats and opens the status window. He looks and thinks it's garbage. He notices the gluttony trait and mana type and thinks these weren't his stats before dying. He wonders if the body and traits change. The protagonist keeps thinking that during the tutorial, he'll gather everything he can. He moves quickly and starts running. More notifications come up. He left the starting point and a magical arrow trap is activated. Cha dodges, smiling, thinking you can only see the arrows once they're fired, and that his knowledge hasn't faded. He keeps running, wondering if this isn't a bit much for a welcome. Still running, Jin sees arrows coming toward him and hitting him. He thinks it's not over yet, just a little more. More arrows activate and hit him again. He grumbles as they hit and thinks it hurts, but he can't stop. Hyuk ends up severely injured, but makes it back to the starting point. The system notifies that he has returned, and all damage is restored. He says that first, he needs to see how much he can take. He can't just run around like an idiot. The 2 traits that made him the strongest challenger, one of them is gluttony. It lets him consume non-living things and make them his own. The plasma he lost is lifeless, and the experience gained from bleeding becomes his. More notifications arrive saying he has been rewarded and his stats increased with EXP tolerance. The Necromancer realizes his EXP tolerance has increased. Even without any good items, he can still endure a few things. It'll take about a week to finish the tutorial and continue climbing the tower. All he needs to do now is endure as many arrow hits as possible and move forward, increasing his stats through gluttony until he reaches the tolerance limit. The tolerance limit starts to rise. 1 month later, the protagonist is exhausted and reaches the end. The system notifies that he has completed the tutorial. His damage has been healed and he feels relieved, saying it took a while because he kept going back and forth, and wonders if it really took him a whole month. Then he notices something. More notifications come in saying that several gods and demons are interested in his method. Cha asks if they're even there watching. Irritated, he yells again and insults them. Jin watches them and thinks that gods and demons are always monitoring everyone, checking if anyone resembles them. Those bastards. None of them are revealing their true names or mystical titles. They're probably doing this to become his disciple. Even if he did well in the tutorial, they don't need to keep their eyes on him. The system notifies that it seems a demon is smiling. The peak of all evil greets him and asks how he's been. Hyuk wonders if it's Baal, if it's him from the 9, and calls him a little bastard. He thinks that the peak of all evil before he switched bodies was the demon who kept following him the whole time just to become his disciple, and wonders if that bastard recognized him. The Necromancer realizes that the one who enabled the soul transmission was him, and that he successfully used that ability. More notifications arrive. Another demon shows interest in him. The protagonist, annoyed, says they're all watching him because of that guy. The peak of evil apologizes, and a god asks what kind of relationship they have. The god asks who he is. The god of thunder wants to speak to him privately, and Macaque has taken a liking to him. Cha asks if they can all shut up because they're driving him crazy, and asks who they think he's going to follow, saying if they want to watch him, just shut up and watch. The peak of evil is sulking. Jin says that if he had to pick someone, it wouldn't be him, so quit the drama. Then he asks about the tutorial rewards. Mana is released, his attributes are maxed out, and more notifications arrive. He's acquired tolerance to plasma loss and tolerance to pain, fainting, and penetration. He can endure it all. Hyuk thinks that's good, and notes that it's rare to get mana during the tutorial, but since he has the mana-type body, he managed to increase it, even though it normally wouldn't rise. Notifications arrive saying that due to his evolutionary progress, a trait has been unlocked. The Necromancer wonders what trait. He already has gluttony. He asks if it's the one labeled with a question mark. He realizes the owner of this body already had that trait. The system announces the trait, versatile. The protagonist wonders what that means. Versatile is a trait given to those who are good at everything. No matter the technique, proficiency adjusts during training and in combat, there's an additional adjustment based on proficiency. Cha gets excited, thinking with this he can finally do it. The title he couldn't get no matter how much he prepared. The best of all, the polymath. The peak of evil is curious about his status window. Jin tells him to get out of his face. He's heading to the next floor. If he wants to follow, fine. The peak of evil asks if he can go with him. Hyuk thinks he's now entering the room of choice and training. The system confirms he has entered the room of choice and training. He enters. There are various weapons. More notifications arrive. Welcome to the room of choice and training. He can choose the weapon and class that suit him best. Once selected, destroy the floor below to be teleported to the first floor of the tower. The Necromancer thinks that in the past, before discovering he was mana type, he didn't hesitate and chose to be a mage. But now, he says to generate a target, thinking of the versatile trait, and wonders why not test this incredible trait. The targets are generated. The protagonist takes a combat stance and shoots an arrow at the targets. He asks for more targets and tells the system to make them attack him too. The system warns he hasn't selected a class yet, and that this type of target could be dangerous. Cha says he doesn't care, just generate them. More notifications come in. Targets will now attack the player. Settings have changed. Jin dodges the target's attacks and hits them quickly. More targets rush toward him, aiming to slash him, and Hyuk cuts them in half with his sword and asks for more to be generated. More notifications say the target difficulty has increased, and a larger target is created. The target is surprised to see the Necromancer leap in and attack him effortlessly. He also attacks the other targets from behind. More targets appear and he notices it's a ranged attack. They begin attacking non-stop and the protagonist hides. The system warns that these are the most difficult targets that can be generated on this floor. Cha asks if that's serious. These are the strongest? He says he'll use his specialty. He moves his weapon while they keep attacking. Jin says he's faster than them and uses his magic arrow power, defeating them with ease. Hyuk is thrilled and wonders if this is the power of the versatile trait. He thinks it's like he's been using every weapon for years. The system notifies that the achievement has been completed. Polymath achievement. Using at least one weapon from each category in the room of choice and training. The reward. Unlocked polymath title and increased attack attribute. The Necromancer asks if polymath is the name of a class. The system asks if he would like to choose polymath as his class and warns that it won't be available once he leaves the room. The protagonist thinks that even though polymath is a great class, he can't ignore the biggest advantage he has and needs to choose that as his main class. So system, he'll choose polymath as his subclass. The system says that's not possible and he asks why. The system explains that subclasses are only unlocked on the 100th floor. Cha realizes he forgot he can't do that at the start. And if he doesn't select this class, he won't be able to leave. Though it's a loss, he wonders if he should use his achievement points. He tells it to unlock the subclass slot and asks if he can do that using performance points. The system is confused and asks how a rookie knows that. A coin can be obtained through such effects. Achievement points allow system modifications. Jin demands an answer. Can he or can't he? He asks if he can use 5,000 points to unlock the subclass slot. The system shows that it's possible, but he doesn't have enough achievement points. He needs 5,050 and only has 5,000. Hyuk says there's no choice and calls out to Baal saying he needs him. Since Baal revealed his identity and spoke to him, he asks if speaking to a god or demon for the first time doesn't earn achievement points. More notifications appear. Achievement. Peak of Evil. Spoke with the great demon. 200 points gained. The Peak of Evil asks if he did well and calls him cutie. The Necromancer tells him to stop and not dare do that again. The system asks if he would like to use the points to select polymath as a subclass. The Peak of Evil thinks fake vomiting is going too far. The protagonist says yes. The system congratulates him for selecting polymath as a subclass and notifies that he will be transported to the first floor upon destroying the room of choice and training. Cha releases energy and says it's time to start his revenge. He strikes his weapon on the ground and the system notifies that he will now be transported to the first floor of the tower. First floor, coral forest. Beasts roam the area. Two survivors grumble, asking how they're supposed to climb the tower when they're struggling on the first floor. The monsters move toward them. The sky cracks open and a portal appears. Jin emerges from it, heading toward a beast, thinking it's his first prey. Hyuk smirks wickedly and eliminates the enemy, saying it's a kobold and he hasn't seen one in a long time. The other beasts glare at him. The Necromancer grins and calls them damn kobolds, saying he's going to devour them and wonders what he'll get. The protagonist stares them down. The survivors watch in shock, thinking it's amazing. He defeated a kobold in a single blow, and even as a mage, he beat it with a kick. One says he doesn't know who he is, but they should team up with him and combine forces. Cha tells them not to come closer. They don't understand. Jin says if they touch one of them, they'll die. Did they understand? They begin trembling with fear and run off. Meanwhile, the beasts are still there. Hyuk asks if it wants revenge for its buddy. The monsters charge at him. The Necromancer attacks with strength, defeating one of them in a single strike. He asks why the other one is just standing there. Won't it attack? The terrified beast runs away. The protagonist starts charging magic and asks if it thinks he'll let it escape. He fires a long-range attack, magic arrow, and eliminates it. All three are defeated. The system welcomes him to the first floor. Cha says he's late. He already fought 3 kobolds and now they're looting. More notifications arrive saying he must complete the floor to advance. Mission description: defeat 10 kobolds. Jin thinks it's easy. He could wipe out 100 now. And since he's at it, earning the Eliminator achievement first will be great. If he eliminates one type of monster multiple times, he'll gain an achievement for being an eliminator, and his past self had gone after all elimination achievements. Now it's time to eliminate his hunger. He activates his gluttony skill, releases mana over the enemy, devours it, and swallows it, thinking he can feel the kobolds' memories and their strength becoming his own. And now he understands their language too. Hyuk opens his status window and wonders how his stats increased so much. He's already on par with a 10th floor challenger. He pauses, wondering about the proficiency adjustment. As a polymath, he gets all the bonuses from every class. He recalls a memory, running kobold thinking it must hurry or it's going to hurt badly. It had finished preparing. The kobold lord. In the present, the necromancer thinks it's the perfect time. A monster lord signals a monster wave. Defeating one earns both an elimination achievement and fame. And if he's facing a wave, he'll need an army. So let them rise. The kobold corpses begin rising amid intense mana and transform into skeletons. The system congratulates him for successfully changing classes. The protagonist says he guesses he's a polymath with past life memories, so changing class is easy. And he's not satisfied with just that. There's still a hidden class on the first floor he needs to find. Then he wonders what that is. One kobold collapses to the ground in fear and the others stare. Cha calls it wonderful and orders his skeleton soldiers to eliminate every kobold they see. The skeletons emit energy from their eyes and defeat them. Hyuk collects the cores. The system notifies the kobolds have been defeated. Then he looks toward a house and says he found it. He opens the door and thinks it seems no one's been there. He tells his skeletons to wait. When the necromancer steps on a certain spot, it breaks. He descends the stairs and says he found it. The first floor's secret class. The protagonist throws all the cores onto the ground and thinks a necromancer is a high-rank class, a mage who uses souls, a spiritual master. And the first spiritual master is hidden there, in the class change tomb. He opens the tomb and a skeleton floats out, surrounded by a powerful aura. Cha thinks it's Vulcan. The skeleton asks if he's his descendant. Jin smiles, thinking it's been a while. Vulcan stares at him and says he's not even surprised to see him. He tried to look fabulous, but now the mood's weird. Hyuk asks if a necromancer is supposed to be surprised by a skeleton and says, besides, he came after reading Vulcan's journal. He's way past the point of being scared by this stuff. He remembers a hidden item, the spiritual master Vulcan's notebook, which he didn't read in this life. Back when he used everything he had to become a mage, he found that notebook and returned to the first floor. When he became a spiritual master, he failed to make Vulcan one of his summons. Vulcan says it's true. He liked him and thinks he's way better than that bastard who came here 10 years ago. The protagonist calls him a damn skeleton in his mind and wonders if he could destroy him, but decides not to, since first he needs to change class. He says he wants to change class. Vulcan apologizes and says first he must reach the 10th floor. Spiritual Master is a higher rank class than Necromancer. He must first change class at the class change tower on the 10th floor. Cha says he's already a Necromancer and tells him to look. He shows his system's class change info. Vulcan asks if he changed class without even reaching the 10th floor and says, that's amazing. A grand talent. He never thought someone could be so much better than that bastard. Jin asks if he's going to change his class or not. Vulcan says sometimes he just can't stop talking. He releases energy from his hands across the room. The spiritual master, Vulcan, long ago before the tower appeared on Earth, he ruled over it. Though he was the most powerful necromancer, he always searched for ways to grow stronger. Summoning those of flesh and blood wasn't enough. There are no stronger summons. Instead of a lich or death knight, he wanted to summon something entirely different. Yes, a soul. He would summon the souls of the fallen, allowing him to create new summons even greater than the existing ones. After a long time, he succeeded and created a new class, Spiritual Master. However, his old body reached its limit and the Spiritual Master class was on the verge of disappearing. So, he resorted to his last option, using necromancy on himself, hoping one of his descendants would carry on his legacy. That's why Vulcan became a semi-NPC, waiting to find someone who could follow his path. A circle of energy glows on the protagonist's body, releasing mana. Vulcan continues channeling energy, and a powerful force surrounds Cha. The skeleton says that bastard he mentioned was the second, and now Cha is the third spiritual master. He tells him he can now use the Soul Crucible to capture souls and summon them. Jin thanks him in thought, realizing that with the Soul Crucible Vulcan gave him, his first target will be Vulcan himself. This time, he won't fail. Vulcan congratulates him and tells him to climb the tower and spread his name. Hyuk smiles and says he's the one who will do that. The skeleton looks confused, and when he realizes it, he calls him a bastard and asks if he forgot the promise written in the journal. The protagonist says dumping your work on others is ugly and that he'll take care of it for free. The skeleton tells him to calm down and asks why he's getting closer. Cha uses his Soul Crucible technique, releasing powerful mana that begins pulling the skeleton. Vulcan asks if he really thinks he'll capture him. Jin believes it's working and sees the glowing cores on the floor. Vulcan flips him off and says that's offensive on Earth. One of his descendants taught him that, and says he'll see him in hell. Then Hyuk strikes, releasing more energy and trapping him in a circle. The skeleton asks if that's magic. The necromancer asks what he thinks and if it's comfy, saying he used Magic Wall, a low-tier spell, to create a prison just for him. Can he believe it? Vulcan, very annoyed, says he can easily break low-tier spells. The protagonist asks who said that was all. He explains that he embedded mana stones infused with kobold mana and activation spells to mimic the current effect. And even if Vulcan can break low-tier magic, can he do it before being captured? Vulcan wonders who he is. How can someone who hasn't even passed the first floor create a tactic like this? Cha says he failed last time, but now he'll finally capture him. The skeleton questions last time and thinks, no way. Jin asks if he's still the second spiritual master or already the third. Vulcan screams his name. Hyuk uses the Soul Crucible and the skeleton screams no, but is devoured anyway by the necromancer. Jin watches and says not to be sad. Now that he's with him, everything he wanted will come true. The protagonist exits the house and his skeletons are waiting for him. The peak of evil is watching. This demon is witnessing the elimination and is curious about his class. Cha thinks gods and demons can't enter the class change chamber and tells them they'll find out soon. No need to keep nagging. He looks at his skeletons and thinks he doesn't need them anymore. Jin gestures with his hand and says, shatter and rise. He devours them too, modifying their bodies, and thinks they don't speak either, until someone calls him a bastard, asking how he dares use Vulcan as a spirit soldier. Hyuk says it's his first time seeing him like that and tells him to just look. He must have been a handsome guy in his youth. Vulcan, furious, says he won't get away with this, and if he underestimates him, the first spiritual master, he'll regret it. Then Vulcan starts feeling something strange and coughs. The necromancer tells him not to overdo it. He's only alive because of his mana, and if he cuts his supply, he'll vanish instantly. Vulcan asks if he thinks he'll obey like a puppy. The protagonist approaches him and asks what choice he has. He reminds him what he did with the disobedient familiars, turned them into spirit orbs and absorbed them. He hopes Vulcan hasn't forgotten what his trait is. Vulcan realizes it's gluttony, and he still has that absurd ability. He thinks if he doesn't obey, he'll be completely devoured. He asks what they'll do now. Cha asks if he's seriously asking that and says they're going to take down that bastard, the Kobold Lord. They head that way. 2 kobolds are standing at the entrance, and they aim at him, moving toward him. Jin smiles and summons his beasts, which charge at the enemies swiftly, eliminating them. At the top of the castle, the kobolds spot him. Hyuk thinks 30 kobold spirit soldiers and they're no match for him anymore. Besides, in this life, he won't just watch. He tells them to take him to their leader and calls them trash. Somewhere else, the Lord is standing still and asks about an intruder. He orders the offerings to be prepared quickly. The necromancer's beasts release their powers, defeating the kobolds with ease. One that wasn't hit looks surprised, and the protagonist appears behind him and snaps his neck. A trapdoor opens on the roof, and kobolds jump out to attack. The skeletons fight them off and Cha draws his sword, cutting them in half, saying a hidden class is a beautiful thing. He senses an aura, he's close, near the Lord's chamber. The peak of evil is cheering with glow sticks. Jin says he doesn't need some hairy-legged old man's cheering because this is in the bag. Someone holding a knife, it's the Lord, releases a large amount of plasma for the offerings and says it won't be enough until they're satisfied. Glory to the demon who contemplates the end. A voice tells him to let her go. The leader asks if that's the next offering. Is she a dokaibi? The Lord grabs her arm, asks what she has there, and says she'll make a much better offering than a human. But someone attacks him, forcing him to release the girl. The leader says he must be the intruder. Hyuk, grinning, tells him to look, asks if he's planning human sacrifices and trying to summon someone, then says it doesn't matter. He's going to lose. The Lord says he's Callum, king of all kobolds, and demands respect from a human. The Necromancer says he's talking too much for a first-floor monster and tells him to show some respect instead. The girl thinks she doesn't know what's happening, but the leader is distracted by that human. This is her chance. The Lord notices her running and asks if she thinks she'll escape. He calls upon the demon who contemplates the end to grant him strength. The protagonist wonders who this demon is. The leader throws bones at the girl. She stumbles while running and falls to the ground thinking, "No, I can't be eliminated here." Cha runs over and shatters the bones. The Lord says that was his attack. Jin asks if he just got kicked away. The girl thanks him. Hyuk says to drop it and get out of there. Then he pauses, noticing her horns, and asks if she's a dokebi. He thinks they're a powerful race from the 100th floor and have no reason to descend, especially one who hasn't even reached adulthood. He wonders if something happened on the 100th floor, and it's worth saving her to get information. The Lord asks how he dares interfere with offerings meant for him. The Necromancer tells her that if she wants to live, she should hide somewhere, because he won't save her twice. She replies she understands. The leader says to try blocking this too. A fresh corpse has double the power. Corpse explosion. The corpses begin exploding. The protagonist backs off and says it's too slow. Cha closes in and strikes him, saying his mana control is terrible. The leader collapses and wonders how a first-floor climber can be that strong. Jin tells him not to just stand there. They're only getting started. The Lord gets furious and calls on the demon who contemplates the end to save him. A massive amount of plasma gathers and rises, binding Hyuk's hand and stopping his movements. He wonders if that's a plasma golem, and how the hell a kobold summoned a familiar of such a high level. The plasma monster slams him to the ground. The kobold lord laughs and asks what he thinks now, says this is his strongest seance. The necromancer asks, "Seance?" And if he has any idea who he's talking to, he'll show him. He summons his beasts and says, "Now this is a seance." The beasts rush into the golem's body, making it explode. The Lord looks shocked and says he destroyed his golem in the blink of an eye. The protagonist says even if he's a monster lord, plasma golems aren't something kobolds can create and asks if it was the work of the demon who contemplates the end. The system notifies the demon who contemplates the end is stunned. That demon nods silently. The peak of evil gives someone a pissed-off look. Cha says since the demon was curious about his power as a spiritual master, he summoned a blood golem upon seeing him fight one of his worshippers, but it ended up just being a toy in someone else's hands. He asks if his mana's drained. Since Bune forced the summon, it was unavoidable. The Lord says it's not possible and that he will find him and get revenge, even if he's eliminated. Jin summons his beasts and says he really hopes he comes. After all, he has a few things to say to him. The beasts hold him down and the leader tells them to let go, saying he's their king and asking if they don't remember that. He calls upon the demon who contemplates the end. Hyuk attacks and tells Bune that his little toy is done, and it's his own fault for testing him, so no complaints. And on top of that, he's going to make him pay for testing him. The demon who contemplates the end laughs heartily and says he loved that. The necromancer makes hand gestures and plasma bursts out everywhere. He has defeated the Lord. The protagonist approaches and asks if he's still alive. The Lord's soul immediately leaves his body, but Cha grabs it and tells him to stay still, asking where he thinks he's going. Jin says sorry, but he has things to do, and thinks about soul orb production, one of a necromancer's basic skills. A skill that allows the user to collect souls and create elixirs. He says now it's mealtime, and swallows him, thinking it wasn't as good as expected, and by the time he reaches the 50th floor, this will be nothing. Hyuk notices someone approaching. It's the girl thanking him for saving her. She introduces herself as Haryu. The necromancer tells her to relax. He just came to eliminate the Lord, and it was a coincidence she was there. Haryu says even so, she has to thank him for saving her. The protagonist asks what she would have done if he were evil. He could have killed or sold her. The girl releases mana and says that if he were evil, she'd find a way. Cha thinks that when it comes to favors and vengeance, they always make sure to return them one day. That's just how all dokebis are. He tells her to answer something. Why is someone who should be on the 100th floor here? Haru replies that someone attacked the Dokebi village on the 100th floor. Jin thinks Dokebis are powerful beings in the tower, even for a challenger, and messing with them isn't smart. He wonders if it was one of the four great species, the Colossi of Strength, giants, the essence of magic, dragons, the masters of demonic energy, demons, or the wings of retribution, angels. The four great species that rule over everything in the tower. Whoever attacked them must belong to one of those clans, or be backed by them. Or worse, it could be the 9 stars. Maybe someone related to them. He calls them bastards. Haru asks if he's okay. Hyuk replies yes and says he's leaving now. She asks where to. The necromancer asks if she wants to stay there, surrounded by pools of blood. Haru says she wants to go with him. The protagonist thinks that although she's young, it's not a bad idea to bring her along. He says he's always busy and won't be able to protect her. She says she can take care of herself. Cha says she almost got eliminated by the Lord. Haru replies that it was because she let her guard down. He says, fine, she can come. He thinks he'll need new clothes. He'll attract too much attention walking around in this plasma-covered outfit. He looks to the side and wonders if that's an item. Somewhere else, the two are walking and Jin has managed to change clothes. They notice a portal on the ground. He keeps walking and the girl stops him. Vulcan says he's ready and there are no more kobolds alive in the castle. Hyuk tells him he did a good job. Haru asks who he is. Vulcan asks who he is and tells her not to say she can't see him. She says she can. Some Dokaibis have high soul affinity. The necromancer smiles and wonders if she's saying she's a special Dokaibi, and if he used gluttony to absorb her ability. Better not. For now, it's best to have her on his side. He looks at the system which notifies him about a monster wave quest. Defeat the monster lord who can cause a monster wave. Warning. Accepting the mission will deactivate all save zones on the first floor. The protagonist says finally. Vulcan asks if it's a monster wave. Haru asks if he's going to accept it. Cha says if he wasn't, there'd be no point in coming here to eliminate the Lord. The peak of evil thinks this is irresponsible. A god, a demon, a god are all worried about this irresponsibility. The demon who contemplates elimination says he'll give a reward to whoever ranks first in contribution. Jin asks if they're trying to bait him. One of them replies that's what the demon who contemplates the end said. Hyuk says he'll decide after he sees the reward. Vulcan says he can't believe it and asks if he wants to be eliminated. Says he knows Hyuk would love for him to die. The necromancer says no, and even after the end, he'll still be his servant. Vulcan tells him to stop saying stuff like that. It's weird. And the protagonist clicks yes. The system notifies that monster waves are coming, and kobolds will begin attacking the village entrances immediately. Soon, all safe zones on the first floor will be deactivated. In the first floor's safe zone, Coral Village, a voice asked what the hell is going on and if it's a monster wave. Survivors wonder who the bastard was that accepted this mess and say if the wave hits, they're all dead. And if the mission is completed, they'll be sent straight to the second floor. Once it starts, there's no way out. They rush to finish their quests. One of them says he only has 3 left and asks for help. In the sky, energy bursts out, creating an extremely bright light. Kobolds begin charging at them. The survivors say it's too late. It's started. There are too many of them. A voice shouts for everyone to run. A massive wave of mana is released all at once, and the protagonist appears saying if anyone touches even one of them, he'll kill them all. The survivors ask who he is and tell him it's dangerous. Can't he see all the kobolds there? Cha releases his energy and summons his beasts. A survivor asks if he's a necromancer and says, this is just the first floor. How did he even get a class? As the kobolds approach, Jin's beasts charge at them too, and he watches them fight. Haru asks if she can eliminate a few as well. Hyuk replies she'd better run. He doubts his soldiers will leave any for her. The girl says not to worry, she has an idea. She releases intense mana and summons something into her hand. The necromancer wonders if it's a pocket dimension. Haru grabs her weapon. A kobold notices her and charges. The girl stares him down with her sword and slices him in half with ease. The protagonist watches and thinks that sword definitely isn't ordinary, and for such a young Dokkaebi to use it so naturally. He wonders if the invaders were after her. Someone calls out to him and asks who he thinks he is to monopolize the wave. Cha asks who they are. One of them introduces himself as Kim and asks if he's heard of the White Swallow Guild. Jin asks about White Swallow. Seung asks if he really doesn't know and explains that it's a subsidiary of the Holy Land Guild, the one run by the Pelin brothers, part of the 9 stars. Hyuk asks what he's talking about. Pelin brothers? Kim replies that his older brother is in White Swallow and they'll be joining once they reach the 10th floor. He noticed Jin had some great skills and says if he talks to his brother, maybe they'll recruit him too. The necromancer interrupts, saying no and summons his beast. Seung is grabbed by it and asks what's going on. The protagonist says it's perfect timing. He needed some information about them. He'll talk after the wave is over because he has some questions. The boy's companions ask why he's interfering. They're fellow tower climbers, and now he's threatening people just because he's some overpowered pig? How can he do that? Cha asks why not, isn't it obvious? He says you can't hit others, can't kill, can't steal. That's Earth's rules. But in the tower, power is everything. He orders his beast to release him and says clearly, he's not alive only because he needs information. Stay away, because chatty people make him want to kill. Kim's companions run to him asking what he'll do. Is he going to just let this go? Seung mutters something and they don't understand. Then Kim yells that he told them to run. If that maniac catches them again, it's over. Meanwhile, the kobolds are fighting against the spirits. One kobold points, noticing two people approaching. Jin advances with terrifying eyes. Vulcan follows, radiating energy. They attack together, causing a massive explosion. But there are still many kobolds left. Hyuk says he'll eliminate them. All Vulcan does is give orders. The two shout, "Rise!" Skeletons are summoned and charge at the enemies, attacking them. The Necromancer says to turn everything they kill into skeleton soldiers. Vulcan replies he didn't even need to say that. The protagonist moves in and says it's time to play. He causes another explosion. Then, with sword in hand, he slashes enemies apart. Harry joins him, but she notices they're coming at her in droves and realizes there are too many. One tries to attack her from behind and scratches her. The girl screams and thinks that, compared to the pain she felt watching her village burn, this is nothing. She pushes through and keeps fighting, slashing them down. After some time, still in the same area, Harry kneels on the ground and thinks she's reached her limit. Then she sees an explosion behind her and thinks, it's amazing, and he's just a one-steep-floor challenger. Yet he wonders how a human can be that strong. He thinks he must follow this human and climb with him. This way, he can avenge his village. A kobold appears behind her, ready to attack, but its head is sliced off by Vulcan, who asks if she's okay. Harry stands up, trembling, leaning on her sword, and says she can take care of herself. Vulcan thinks this young girl is full of determination and wonders what she's been through. The girl asks why he helped her and says that while fleeing from the 100th floor, no one tried to help her. She was just glad no one tried to violate her. She asks if he's helping because he wants something in return. Vulcan replies he doesn't know because spirit soldiers must follow the orders of their spiritual master. And that's all he has to say. Harry looks at him. He says he's just following orders. His master said she must not be eliminated under any circumstances, and that he must ensure she fulfills her goals. And if he doesn't help, he'll be seen as someone who didn't give his all. The girl thinks that Cha was the only one in the tower who helped her, and this favor he did for her, she promises she'll repay it. She uses her energy, summons a mask, and puts it on her face, now with terrifying eyes and much more intense mana. Vulcan asks what's going on with the girl. He can sense her massive mana. The protagonist and the kobolds look surprised to see her getting stronger. Harry quickly moves toward the enemies and attacks, cutting several down at once, releasing great power. She looks to the side, runs toward more enemies, and easily eliminates them. Jin thinks he knew it. The attackers were after her and her sword. And it's better to keep that a secret if she finds out her village was attacked because of that. The system notifies 1 minute left until the wave ends. The three of them attack together, and one of them shouts that the wave is thinning. Hyuk says that must be the last one. He throws his sword, and the kobold is struck and eliminated in a single hit. The portal starts to close. More notifications arrive, congratulating him for completing the wave and successfully preventing it. The Necromancer says of course he did. Vulcan says he's truly a monster. Harry says it's finally over. She's about to collapse, but someone catches her. It's the protagonist asking if she's okay and saying that skill shouldn't be used when exhausted. The girl thanks him. They notice system messages saying the wave is over and there's a reward for the top 3 contributors. Cha says that's great and to stop dragging it out, give him his reward. Then more notifications come in. 2,500 enemies defeated, 500 achievement points earned. Jin thinks all his attributes went up by 5. It may not seem like much, but those achievement points apply to all stats. And if he keeps learning skills through versatile and gluttony, that number will increase infinitely. He's excited. The system notifies that he was the top contributor. First place, Hyuk. Second, Haryu. Third, Vulcan. Holding the magic die he received, Vulcan wonders why it had to be him. The Necromancer asks if he got one too and says, that's great, hand it over. Vulcan says it'll be tough to use him as a spirit soldier anyway. The protagonist now has 2 dice. The girl tells him to take hers too, as a symbol of their future together. Cha asks about hers and says sorry, but he's been betrayed before. He said she could come along, but he doesn't trust her. And second place rewards are too tempting to accept without suspicion. He doesn't want to be betrayed again. She has to make him trust her, or he doesn't want her following him anymore. Harry looks down and begins releasing mana. Vulcan asks what she's doing. The girl says he can take both, and she'll give him her Dokabi mask too. The old man asks if she's really giving her mask to a stranger. Jin thinks a dokebi's mask is basically the essence of their power. They only give it to their partner once in a lifetime, when they make a marriage proposal, and asks why she's giving him that. Harry replies it's the price for saving her life twice, and proof she won't betray him. Hyuk says those masks are worth more than that, and there must be something else behind it. The girl answers, revenge. The necromancer doesn't fully understand and asks about it. Haru says she hasn't told him everything, but her village was burned. She tried to find survivors but didn't find any. She's probably the last dokabi alive, and as the last of her kind, she must avenge her people. So let her climb the tower with him. The protagonist thinks about revenge, that she's like him. He says if she betrays him, she dies, mask or not, and not to think of it as some kind of lifeline or safety rope. The girl says it's fine. She's excited to climb with him and calls him Orabioni. Cha has no idea what that means. Jin just says, whatever. Call him what she wants. He uses the 3 dice and gets a mana ring, reduces mana cost by 10%, a mana earring, 15% reduction, and a mana necklace, 20% reduction. Vulcan says those items are great. Harry asks if they're really good. Vulcan replies they're perfect for necromancers who use mana to maintain armies. They'll let him increase both the quality and quantity of summons by 45%. Hyuk equips them and asks how long he's going to stay quiet. Then he calls for Bune and asks if he really thought he forgot about that reward promise. The demon who contemplates the end suggests they go somewhere else. Somewhere else, Vulcan comments how empty the city is. The protagonist replies that they probably evacuated to the 2nd floor or to the forest because of the wave. The protagonist says that's enough and tells him to spill it. The demon who contemplates the end tells him to stop rushing until a wave of mana is released onto the table along with a ring. Cha says he must be really lucky with items today and decides to take a look. He picks up the ring and examines it, telling them to wait. Vulcan and the girl get curious and ask what it is. Jin replies that the ring contains demonic energy. The spirit soldier asks if he's serious. Demonic energy is a demon-exclusive resource, a power considered a high-class mana source. Normally, to obtain demonic energy, one must become a demon slave, and even then, they receive it bit by bit. The difference between having just 1 unit of demonic energy and none at all is massive. His status window updates with demonic energy. The demon who contemplates the end offers a handshake. Hyuk accepts it, saying that for an item this good, he can forgive his pranks. Vulcan says it looks like he's finally ready to climb the tower. The peak of all evil is burning with jealousy. The peak of evil gets whiny and wants a handshake too. He extends his hand and waves it around. The necromancer asks if it's really just for free and says he can offer a gift too if that's what he wants. The spirit soldier asks if he's really trying to bargain with the demon. He must have lost his mind. The peak of all evil starts frantically searching his closet, drawers, and under his bed. The protagonist says, that's enough. The peak of all evil starts thinking and says he'll create a quest. Cha asks if he's serious about a quest. Vulcan says a demon's quest is a rare chance and calls him a coward. Jin says he's a bit surprised too, but will do this favor and accept. The peak of evil grumbles that wasn't his intention. Hyuk tells him not to do it if he doesn't want to. The peak of evil shakes his head and says it's too late. He already made the pact. Quest from Baal. The condition is to become known throughout the tower before reaching the 100th floor. Failure penalty. Must begin training to become his apostle. Reward, a formula for anything he wants. Contract fee, a handshake. Hyuk wonders about a formula for anything. Thinks with a demon's formula, the sky's the limit. But the penalty is terrifying too. If he fails, he'll become Baal's apostle. Still, he can't miss this chance. So he tells Baal he accepts. The peak of all evil smiles while shaking his hand. Someone opens the door and asks what he's going to do. Is he heading to the 2nd floor, or a Bioni? The necromancer says no. He's going to grab that bastard Kim and extract information. That's why he captured him. Vulcan asks if he knows where he is. The protagonist replies that he planted a spirit soldier on him. Even if he's far away, he's sure he's still on the 1st floor. The spirit soldier says he should have mentioned that earlier and heads out. Cha asks why not have a chat while they walk. Haru doesn't quite get it. Jin brings up the mask and wants her to explain more about it. They keep walking. Hyuk says, in short, the mask allows the user to access the dokabi's abilities. He asks if a dokabi's powers are related to talismans and supernatural abilities. The girl confirms they can use supernatural powers and she has battle clairvoyance, which lets her see into the future during fights. The necromancer says clairvoyance is unlucky. If he were going to get a power, it'd be better if it helped in combat. Harry glances sideways. The protagonist asks what she's looking at. She says it's nothing. She just thinks he's a bit strange. Outsiders used to travel for days just to have them use that ability. Everyone would go ask the elders trained in future sight. Most of them were worried about what the future held and did everything they could to escape their fate. Cha asks what's the point in running from it and says If something's worth worrying about, why not just crush it head on? Haryu says that's a relief. She thinks her ability suits him well. She explains her ability as battle clairvoyance, a special type for combat, and asks if that isn't useful. Jin hugs her and says, it's perfect. He's happy. She's the best. He thinks, Star Sword, Star Bow, the Great Thief, the legendary spear. When it comes to the 9 stars combat specialization, there might be a chance if they fight. The girl blushes and thanks him. The peak of all evil is snapping pictures. The 9-tailed fox clicks her tongue. Hyuk gets annoyed, calls Bal a stalker, and tells him to get lost. He tells her he's sorry. Harry says no, she's happy she could help. The Necromancer says either way he'll make sure she gets what that mask is worth, and he'll help her with her revenge. The girl thanks him again and says she wishes the best for both of them. Somewhere else, someone filled with mana covers another's mouth and tells them to stop hesitating. It's Kim being restrained by Vulcan, who says all his friends abandoned him and ran and to wait until his master arrives. He asks if Kim knows how hard it is to hold him back without killing him, and demands to know where the hell that coward is now. The protagonist arrives asking if he caught him. The spirit soldier asks where he was and if he knows how hard it was to keep him under control. Cha draws his sword and asks if Kim tried to run, ordering his soldier to step aside. Jin slams his sword into the tree Kim is leaning on and says he'll give him his sword back, asking where he wants it, in his hands or in his stomach. It all depends on how he answers. He tells him to spill everything he knows about the White Swallow Guild. After a while, Seung says he's leaving now. Vulcan asks if he's really letting him go. Hyuk replies that he's going to destroy his guild. He asks about the Holy Land's affiliated guilds and says tons of small guilds are working with them. From floor 10 to 200, there are many minor guilds. The soldier says that if he wants to take down all of them, it'll definitely get annoying. The Necromancer says he can use that to his advantage. Harry asks if he's talking about Baal's mission. The protagonist replies yes. If he takes down the guilds influenced by the Pelon brothers, it'll give him a good shot at completing the quest. He then suggests they start heading toward the 10th floor. On the 2nd floor, in the safe zone, people are talking about those who cleared the wave and that 2 of them were involved. They point and say, look, here they come. A bully asks what that is. Is it a ghost mask? The kids start firing off questions, asking if he was the one who handled the wave, if he has a guild, and what his name is. Cha thinks he can't reveal his real name yet, so he says his name is Ghostface. They turn and start walking away. The bully says to wait. He needs to explain to them. His partner tells him to calm down and asks if he committed a crime before coming to the tower. He says there are plenty of cases of people from Earth hiding inside the tower. Jin looks back and thinks hiding one's face or identity in the tower is normal, and he's sure he drew their attention with the news of the wave and the mask. He says to keep moving, he's got things to do. The spirit soldier replies that he understands. They teleport away, and the kids are stunned, saying they're gone. The 3 reappear elsewhere. The system notifies, welcome to the 2nd floor. Complete the following mission to move to the next floor. Defeat kobolds. Hyuk says it doesn't seem like anything they can't handle and asks if he can take care of the mission. Vulcan asks if he wants him to bring those things in alive. The Necromancer replies that if he can, bring one for Harry too. He wants to test demonic energy, and to hurry if he wants to watch. The spirit soldier says he hopes Hyuk didn't use all his demonic energy before getting back. The girl asks if it's really okay to complete the mission like this. He answers that if she doesn't like it, she can go hunt them herself. He's not forcing her. The protagonist stands still and wonders if this is insane, being able to use demonic energy like this. He says he'll see how well it works. The power of demons, one of the 4 great species. He begins releasing power. It intensifies. He thinks, this is demonic energy. Harry calls him over and tells him to look in the bush. There's a kobold. The monster charges toward them. Cha says it's perfect and asks why not test it on him. He uses demonic manifestation, creating a large power circle and attacks, but the kobold dodges. The girl is surprised it dodged. Jin thinks, no, this is an attack that doesn't need to hit. The monster's shoulder starts to crack and break. Harry asks what's happening. He replies that demonic energy is wild power. Those unqualified can't use it. This is what happens to them, even if it just grazes them. And this is the important part. If you infuse demonic energy into a spirit soldier, a stronger one is summoned. But the mana appears as a thread. Hyuk thinks the mana crumbled. It seems the soul couldn't handle the demonic energy either. And he needs to reduce the density of the demonic energy, so he lowers it from 10 to just 1. He says it's complete now. The girl says he did it, and it looked really hard. The Necromancer says he was surprised by how easy it was, and thinks that since not many people can handle demonic energy besides demons, he's sure no one knows how easy it is to use. A voice says that was done with demonic energy. It's Vulcan, who also says it looks like the fusion was perfect. A spirit soldier with demonic energy can be called a demonic spirit soldier. The protagonist says demonic spirit soldier doesn't sound bad. Vulcan observes and says it's perfect, considering he's his student. Cha thinks that doesn't mean every time he captures a soul he should infuse it with demonic energy. It'd be hard to use in battle, and wonders if he really needs to summon them at all. He says his spirit soldier has more experience than himself when it comes to summoning, and his skill at commanding and positioning summons in battle is excellent too. Vulcan says it looks like he's finally respecting the teacher, until he notices a huge wave of mana heading toward him and hitting him. He starts screaming and asks what he's doing. Jin says if he infuses demonic energy into his soul, the soldiers he summons might become demonic spirit soldiers automatically. And since his soul is stronger than a kobold's, he'll use all the demonic energy he has. Hyuk releases a lot of energy. Harry gets scared and says but the necromancer cuts her off and tells her not to act dramatic. The first spirit master won't die from something like that. Vulcan keeps getting blasted and says if he survives this, he's going to hunt him down and eat him for breakfast. The protagonist tells him to feel free, and if he gets strong enough to challenge him, he'll welcome it. The energy calms and fades. Vulcan is now surrounded by immense mana. Cha smiles and says his greatest demonic spirit soldier is him. The soldier says he made a mistake by summoning someone stronger than himself. That was the biggest mistake as a necromancer. Jin picks up the mask and asks if he's sulking, then says, "It's great." Hyuk puts on the mask and says he was looking for a worthy opponent with it. Vulcan replies, "As you wish," and says he'll show the demonic spirit soldiers he can summon. Vulcan summons his spirits and tells them to take them down, his demonic spirit soldiers. The necromancer puts on the mask, his eyes becoming more menacing. Harry thinks he used the powers of the mask. The demonic spirit soldiers approach. The protagonist thinks they're slower and wonders if they're just slow to him. And if this is the world the girl can see, Cha quickly defeats the soldiers and approaches Vulcan, saying that even if he looks like this now, he used to be called the Star of the End. Jin punches him in the face, knocking him down, and tells him to behave and follow orders. The soldier crashes to the ground. Harry looks worried and calls him uncle. Hyuk says spirits like him aren't destroyed by normal physical attacks. Vulcan says that only applies to normal people. It still hurts when he punches him. The girl asks if he just used the mask's powers. The necromancer says yes. Everything around him felt slower, and it was like he became a martial arts master for a moment. Harry says that phenomenon might have been a side effect from the ability failing. The protagonist asks what she means by side effect, and if that was a side effect, what was the mask supposed to do? The girl says she told him it's meant to be battle foresight. Not only should the enemies appear slower, but he should be able to see their future moves too. Cha says no way and asks how she does that then. She replies that when she tries, it just happens. Jin wonders if it really just happens and thinks he forgot. She must be a genius, even among dokebis. Even if he asked her to teach him, it'd be hard for her. Harry asks if he feels dizzy or anything. He says he's fine and asks why. The girl explains that if an untrained dokebi tries to use the special ability, most would suffer headaches or dizziness. That also applies to her, and she can't use foresight whenever she wants. She was just worried since he couldn't activate the ability. Hyuk is impressed and asks if she keeps hitting where it hurts. She replies that's not what she meant and she's sure he'll be able to use it soon. The necromancer thinks he miscalculated and believed everything was going his way. He was too excited about becoming incredibly strong on the second floor. He says he's fine now and thanks her. The girl replies it was nothing. Vulcan is sitting on the ground, totally dejected, thinking how he, the greatest spirit master, ended up like this. He looks to the side. Harry approaches him. Vulcan hugs her and thanks her, saying that unlike that weakling, she's there to comfort him. The girl points to the side and says it looks like they need him to bring more kobolds. The protagonist says that if they need him that badly, he better go fetch one before he turns his soul into an anima orb and eats it. She says that's exactly what he said, and the Great Master wonders how it came to this. The system notifies that the mission is complete. Third floor cleared, fourth floor cleared. Haiti also helps with her skill, easily cutting them while grinning sinisterly. On the fifth floor, people ask if they've heard rumors about the guy who calls himself Ghostface. They say he's been in the fifth floor forest for 3 days now, and it seems like they're only dealing with kobolds. And from the fifth floor on, goblins that can use poison darts will start to appear. Somewhere else, a large amount of energy is being released by Cha. A goblin hanging in a tree observes him, then launches a ranged attack, but it's sliced in half by Harry's sword. She asks how he dares try to attack Orobioni. The goblin looks terrified, and Vulcan summons the spirit soldier toward it. The soldier strikes and quickly eliminates it. The Great Master says it was good she stopped him. She says he tried to attack and she should have cut him herself. Vulcan says something's off, her evil smile, and wonders what the hell is going on. He asks if she's okay. Harry says yes, but wonders what's happening and why she's holding a sword and smiling. The protagonist says he's waited long enough and finished the preparations. Tonight, there will be a monster wave. On the fourth floor, during the nights before entering the fifth, the three sat around a campfire. Cha says that from the fifth floor on, there'll be goblins instead of kobolds, and they'll also have to earn the achievement Goblin Eliminations. The girl asks if he's going to hunt the monster lord again. Vulcan says you can't just hunt a lord whenever you want. No one knows when or which floor it'll appear. Jin says he's not going to hunt a goblin lord, actually he doesn't need to, because he knows the method to manually trigger a wave. The other two look surprised, and the Great Master says if that method existed, rumors would have spread throughout the tower. Hyuk says he found it by chance. He asks if it was on the top of the third floor or the 400th. He says a crack appeared while climbing the tower, and that's how he discovered it. Every floor has a central area where monsters are born, and if you find it and keep channeling mana into it, it will produce monsters like a wave. Vulcan says he must have gotten some benefits from that without others knowing. The Necromancer says this is his first time trying. Monsters above the 300th floor are on another level compared to goblins. Even for the four great races, facing a wave head-on would be impossible. The Great Spirit Master says when it was possible to explore that, he didn't know, and when he found out, he couldn't test it. The Necromancer agrees and says it's different now. They'll create as many waves as possible to grow strong fast. Somewhere else, in real time, with several people around, the ground starts shaking. A boy asks if there's an earthquake inside the tower. His friend tells him to look over there. They realize it's a wave. They've never seen this on the first floor. Countless goblins start emerging. The boys start running, asking why it's happening in the village and saying there was no notification. The beasts start using ranged attacks and hit them from behind. One of the boys falls to the ground. The blonde one asks if he's okay and tells him to get up. The one on the ground says he can't move. The blonde thinks it's the goblin's paralyzing poison. He won't be able to move for a while. The blonde grabs his friend and sees the beasts ahead. This is the end. He didn't even make it to the 10th floor. To think he'll die here. Then the protagonist arrives and uses his demonic power ring. He starts unleashing a huge amount of power to strike the enemies. Then he tells the boy that he wasn't hit and needs to get the poisoned one to safety. The blonde asks who he is, and voices shout that it's Ghostface. He's appeared, a person who's already survived a wave, and they're saved. Cha thinks they'll only survive because he needs them to, and hopes they spread rumors about him. He summons his soldiers and tells them to fight. Then, the soldiers attack the goblins. Vulcan says he was the one who created the soldiers and asks why Cha is taking the credit. Jin tells him to stop whining and make more soldiers. Suddenly, they look to the side and see a large surge of energy. The demon spirit soldier is being burned by shaman goblins. The Great Spirit Master explains that the shaman can attack demon spirit soldiers. Hyuk replies that it's obvious, even without being told, and if they don't deal with him first, it'll be impossible to complete the wave. Haryu jumps from a rooftop and defeats several goblins with a single strike. Vulcan cheers for her until he notices something. The Necromancer is consuming souls, using the gluttony skill. He thinks that imagining this fire affecting a spirit is a waste of a technique on a goblin, and he'll make good use of it. He uses Soul Flame and his mana intensifies greatly. He says his partner did great against the shaman goblin and to keep it up. Harry is once again smiling sinisterly. The protagonist is confused and calls her. Her sword starts emitting an extremely intense light. Cha wonders if her sword is glowing and thinks he knew it wasn't an ordinary item. He questions what the hell that thing is. Then his eyes widen when he sees her wearing different clothes and releasing more power. He calls out to her. The girl smiles in his direction and approaches him, slashing. Jin grits his teeth. The surrounding houses are sliced in half. The goblins look on in fear as the buildings begin to collapse. Even a wooden beam is cut through. Hyuk realizes she could destroy the entire village in the blink of an eye and wonders what the hell that sword is. The girl swings her sword again. The Necromancer dodges, but it clips his clothing and causes an explosion. The protagonist removes his mask and introduces himself, asking if she doesn't recognize him. Harry says nothing and charges him again, but Cha blocks. He thinks he needs to wait. She's way too strong. The girl continues her relentless assault. Vulcan calls out to them both, asking if the weakling is alive and if she's okay. Jin realizes it's telepathy. The Great Spirit Master says it seems he's fine and asks about the girl. Hyuk apologizes, saying he was nearly split in half by her strike. No matter how he looks at it, she seems to be the final vanguard the Dokabis left behind. Vulcan asks about the wave. The Necromancer replies that most of the monsters are dead and he can take care of the rest, but he needs to handle the girl. The protagonist charges at her, trying to use battle clairvoyance. His vision changes. He thinks his instincts, honed through climbing 599 floors, are telling him this sword is dangerous and will shred him to pieces. There are no eternal friends or enemies in the tower. Despite her sad story, this is the end. He apologizes to her. He's about to strike, but hesitates, just watching her. He wonders why he's hesitating. Harry calmly grabs his weapon with one hand. Cha thinks she's using her battle clairvoyance. The girl laughs and throws him to the ground, injuring him. She yells for them to rise. Harry looks shocked as skeletons rise from the ground. Jin says those sleeping among the ruins, those killed in the goblin wave, should go, his skeleton soldiers, and stop her. Harry releases energy from her eyes and flings the skeletons away with a single effortless strike. Hyuk realizes he didn't even see the strike that cut them down and wonders if she used her battle clairvoyance. And how do you defeat someone that strong? Then another explosion occurs and the necromancer retreats to the top of a house, confused. Seeing her in front of him, he realizes something is wrong and wonders if she's exhausted. But he notices it's not that. Plasma is leaking from her eyes and something's definitely off. He wonders if this is the side effect she mentioned. If so, there's a chance. He just has to stop her from using battle clairvoyance. The protagonist keeps backing away, but she keeps advancing and stares him down. Cha asks what she's doing and challenges her to a one-on-one. Harry charges with her sword, but ranged attacks begin. Jin has summoned goblins. He says it's the goblin's paralyzing poison, which will be lethal even to a dokebi, and he doubts she'll be able to dodge without her battle clairvoyance. The girl grits her teeth and starts screaming, moving quickly and slashing the nearby goblins. Hyuk watches her as she comes toward him and attacks, but the necromancer dodges. Haryu lands and keeps attacking, facing him directly. She starts laughing with her sword in hand until she's struck by the paralyzing poison. The girl realizes she's been hit, and the protagonist says that without the side effect of using battle clairvoyance, this plan would have been impossible. The goblins watch as Harry trembles, paralyzed, and Cha says the plan was to shoot a poison dart from behind, from her blind spot. The girl feels weak and collapses, but Jin catches her in his arms, relieved, saying it was tough. He notices the sensation in his hands growing stronger and wonders if the paralyzing poison is spreading. He calls for the zombie and orders it to bring him that poisonous dart. Hyuk then releases his energy onto the dart, and the system notifies that he has acquired resistance to paralyzing poison. The necromancer looks at her and says she has a very annoying power to fight against. Harry is dreaming. She's in a pink place, floating, with her sword in front of her and asking where she is. Someone touches the sword and asks if she's the current owner, the wielder of the dragon-slaying sword, and says she's just a child. The girl asks who he is and if he's a dokabi. He replies she's half right and half wrong. Harry asks what he means. He places the sword at her neck and says he'll warn her. If she unsheathes it again without preparation, it'll devour her. In real time, the girl opens her eyes and Vulcan says it looks like she's awake. The protagonist, carrying her in his arms, asks if she's woken up. Haryu asks where they are. He replies that they're in the village on the 6th floor, having just arrived from the 5th. Embarrassed, the girl asks why he's carrying her. Cha asks if she doesn't remember and says he's upset and will explain everything. They enter a house and he says that after analyzing her gear and the stamina level there on the 6th floor, they'll go straight to the 10th. Inside the tower, there's a large city every 10 floors, but to enter it, they have to fight a boss monster. Harry replies that she knows. It's the Great Orc Warrior. The Grand Spirit Master says that considering his unique battle power, he's basically a monster lord. The girl says that once they're all good, they'll go. Jin interrupts and says no. From now on, she'll go on without them. Haryu is surprised and asks what he means and if he's abandoning her. Hyuk says no and asks if she doesn't remember what happened on the 5th floor during the wave. She replies that her memory cuts off at a certain point. The necromancer says her sword is a demon sword with a power similar to an ego sword. It grants incredible power, but consumes the user's mind. She attacked him after losing consciousness. If she relies on such unstable power, she'll be eliminated before reaching the 100th floor, so that's her homework. Climb to the 10th floor alone without depending on the sword. The girl asks if that means she has to become stronger instead of relying on unstable power, and says she will become strong enough to deserve being part of the team. The protagonist agrees. They go outside and Haryu thanks him for the cloak. He says she doesn't need to show she's a dokebi when she's alone, and there's no need to rush. He has things to resolve on the 10th floor and will be there for a while. Vulcan says that's sad. The girl says she'll meet them soon. Cha says he'll be waiting, and that she can take as long as she needs. Each will go their separate way. A few days later, on the 9th floor, beasts lie defeated on the ground. A goblin is making a noise. Jin, wearing the mask, says, "It's just big. It's no different from a goblin." Anne tells it to scram. Hyuk jumps and rushes his opponent, attacking and dropping it in a single blow. The Grand Spirit Master says it looks like he's getting the hang of it. The Necromancer says not to forget to extract their souls. He needs demon spirit orc soldiers. Vulcan says it seems like creating waves is just routine now. The protagonist asks what he's complaining about. Vulcan replies that he's not loving it and can't believe how cold he is. He hasn't said a word about Harry. Cha asks what he's talking about and says he wouldn't accept her as an ally if he thought she failed. She's strong and will do everything to get her revenge. For now, they need to focus and bring more orcs. The manual wave wasn't enough, and they'll need several more. The Grand Master says he can't believe him and asks if he has no respect for his elders or if he even has parents. Jin replies that's right, he doesn't. Vulcan is confused and Hyuk explains he's an orphan raised in an orphanage and Choi was from the same orphanage. The Grand Master becomes thoughtful, places a hand on his shoulder and says he understands what he's going through. The Necromancer asks what kind of reaction that is. Vulcan says it's because he's a softie and tries to hug him. The protagonist tells him to act normal and get lost. He hates receiving pity. The system notifies that the achievement Orc Eliminators has been completed. Elsewhere, on the 10th floor in the trial room, notifications pop up. Welcome to the 10th floor. To enter the heart of the 10th floor, you must defeat the boss monster. If you fail, you'll be forcibly returned to the 9th floor. The Grand Master asks what that is and says he's never seen it before. The protagonist says it looks like a record board and Vulcan asks if all those were done in under a minute. Cha says his name isn't there. The Grand Master says his isn't either. And most of the records belong to members of the 4 great races. Jin suggests they break the record today. Vulcan laughs and says it sounds great. More notifications say the trial is preparing. Hyuk says they should get ready to fight anyway. Another notification says they have 1 minute to defeat the boss. The Necromancer says it looks doable and asks to use his soldiers to restrain the boss as soon as it spawns. The Grand Spirit Master says he'll prepare everything. The protagonist says it's showtime. He places his hand on the ground, creating a magic circle and summoning a magic spear. He says he'll show the power of a versatile warrior and uses his element ability. The elements move around the spear, piercing, dexterity, resilience, and lethality. Cha thinks he'll never forget this. He's enchanting energy. The aura around the spear becomes incredibly intense. They get into attack position. The system notifies that the trial will begin shortly, and the countdown starts. The trial begins. The great orc warrior is summoned. He has red, shadowy eyes and massive size, holding his weapon. Vulcan tells the demon spirit soldiers to go. The soldiers pin down the enemy's legs and arms. Jin says the word Gungnir, and the spear flies toward the monster, ripping its head off and dropping its body to the floor. The system displays that the record was broken for the fastest time completing the 10th floor trial, and asks if they'd like to enter a name. Hyuk says to put Ghostface, so it's recorded. On the 8th floor, people say to look. The best record on the 10th floor is less than a second, and it's Ghostface, the wave eliminator. Haryu is surprised and thinks she needs to try harder. Elsewhere, Vulcan says to think they broke the record held by the 4 great races. Even the top spirit masters never did that, and he calls him his student. The Necromancer asks if he means they're the only ones who did it, and tells them to go. They've got more to do on the 10th floor. The Grand Spirit Master says to hurry and wait for the girl. The system notifies that they've reached the 10th floor and the auction house has been unlocked. In another place, someone flips a coin and catches it while watching the system closely. A man talks about Ghostface. The 10th floor, this is the first major city that challengers visit. It's also where the portal to Earth is. Because of that, people who quit climbing the tower obtained trade rights and ended up building the biggest city within the first 100 floors of the tower. The protagonist says he'll sell the rest of the loot and just buy some potions and other consumables. Vulcan says they're placing restrictions on the auction, but trade in the city is still booming. Cha confirms this. There are people who just live normal lives there, and you can't buy anything requiring the auction. A vendor yells that it's golden lich fruits. Another merchant calls him, asking if he needs weapons from the Golden Lich weapon shop. Another invites him to rest at the Golden Lich Inn. The Grand Master asks what Golden Lich is. Jin says he figured he wouldn't know. The Golden Lich Company, they're the largest company in the tower, established many years ago. And Golden Lich is someone's name, the richest man in the tower. They don't know his real name, but he's said to have unimaginable amounts of gold, and most things traded in the tower pass through his hands. Vulcan asks if he didn't say he had business to take care of. Hyuk replies that he did, and he's going to get a sponsor. The Grand Spirit Master asks about a sponsor and who it is. The Necromancer responds that he's looking at him right now, along with all the sponsor's logos. Vulcan looks shocked and asks if he's saying the sponsor is. The protagonist cuts him off and says yes, the Golden Lich is going to be a sponsor. Elsewhere, a staff member welcomes him to Golden Lich. Anything of monetary value can be bought and sold there: weapons, loot, potions, and information. Anything can be traded at the Golden Lich Company. She says to take a ticket and wait, and that it's a great number for him. Cha takes number 18. Then number 18 is called. A young man introduces himself as Halcyon, in charge of the 3rd counter, and asks how he can help. Jin says he'd like to buy something. Halcyon says of course and asks if he can get his name. Hyuk says no and takes the mask out of the bag, asking if this would work. The staffer looks alarmed and says that mask, it's Ghostfa. The Necromancer cuts him off, tells him to shut up, and asks if he thinks there's a reason he doesn't walk around with his mask on. Halcyon agrees and says, it's true. The protagonist tells him to first look at the money. There are 3,000 gold coins earned from waves. The staffer asks what he's trying to buy with all that money. Cha responds that it's the Golden Lich himself. He wants to buy a meeting with him. Halcyon is stunned and asks if he means Mr. Golden Lich. He wonders if Hyuk is crazy and whether the rumors about him being a bandit outside the tower are true. Jin asks what's wrong. He said anything could be bought and sold there. The staffer apologizes and says it's not possible. Hyuk asks what he means. Halcyon replies there are two reasons. First, Mr. Golden Lich is busy. The Necromancer asks for the second reason. Halcyon answers that it might sound rude, but the money he offered is too little. 3,000 gold is a lot, but it's nothing compared to Mr. Golden Lich's time. The protagonist thinks it won't work. The staffer apologizes again. Cha asks how much it would cost just to meet the branch manager there. He climbs the stairs. Vulcan says he's a terrible person, asking a random staffer to let him meet the company manager, and asks what Halcyon ever did to him. Jin asks if he has any better ideas for meeting the Golden Lich and says if he does, he's open to criticism. Then asks if this is the place. He knocks and says he's Ghostface. A voice tells him to come in. Hyuk opens the door. A man introduces himself as the 10th floor branch manager of the Golden Lich Company, Puppet, and says it's a pleasure to meet him. He asks if he wanted to meet Mr. Golden Lich. The Necromancer replies yes, but it seems he's not here. Puppet apologizes and brings up the money he offered. The protagonist asks how about this. For calling him here first, he'll definitely become his sponsor when they meet. The branch manager says he's being arrogant now and has heard a lot about him, but it doesn't sound good to hear someone speak so casually. One of them releases energy from his hand and thinks that with his puppet trait, he can forcibly control someone wrapped in his strings. He says he's sorry, but he'll have to leave. Cha questions the arrogance. He moves his hand and says he'll bet arrogance too, and asks if that isn't enough. Puppet wonders if he just nullified his ability, which works even on challengers from floor 180, and asks what that was. He moves his hand, shifting them to another space, and says he's sure it's Hyuk's first time seeing this. Jin says it's the Mind Realm, an infinite realm recently created that separates souls and minds from the body. The branch manager wonders how a 10th floor challenger knows about the Mind Realm. He confirms that reality's laws don't work there. It's a dimension where one must fight using experiences and soul strength. If Jin defeats him in battle, he'll try to arrange a meeting with Mr. Golden Lich. Strings wrap around Jin's body. Jin asks if this is the power of experience and soul strength and says then the manager is no match for him. He asks if he hasn't realized yet. He breaks the strings and says his trait doesn't work on him. Puppet wonders how a 10th floor challenger knows about his trait and realizes Jin has the mental dexterity of a challenger from at least floor 100, maybe even above floor 200. He admits he's met his match. The waters in the area begin to stir and grow stronger, and puppets are summoned, rising from the waves. Hyuk looks surprised and asks if they're puppets. The opponent responds that it's a puppet army. Lights flash as the branch manager continues saying that in the mind realm, experience is your strength. Those are puppets he gained through his experiences. To climb beyond the 100th floor, he refined the product to the point where it strengthens when infused with mana, and those powered-up puppets are as strong as a 50th floor challenger. The moment Hyuk entered the mind realm, the outcome was already decided. He orders his puppet army to attack. The puppets charge, ready to strike. The Necromancer widens his eyes as they attack, saying this is the end. Puppet says injuries in the mind realm aren't reflected in the real world, so he can rest in peace. But then the puppets are thrown away. The branch manager asks what's going on and if it's magic. A black mist flows through the area, summoning a powerful skeleton. Puppet asks if it's the Lich Mage and why a 100th floor boss is here. The protagonist says it's not as easy as he thought. The branch manager laments his puppets. Cha says that even in the mind realm, it takes time to materialize an eliminated person. A puppet army? Looks like he's never seen what a real army is. And this is a perfect opportunity, so watch closely, because this is what a real army looks like. From the moment they entered the mind realm, the outcome was decided. Mere puppets. That's what led to his defeat. The branch manager realizes it's the Lich, Dullahan, and others whose names he doesn't know, and wonders if they're all bosses from above the 100th floor. Who the hell is this guy? He's so overwhelmed he can't even think straight and asks who the hell Jin really is. Jin, with his summoned beasts, sends them charging forward, and Puppet screams loudly. In the real world, he opens his eyes, sweating profusely, wondering when he returned. He hadn't released the mind realm, and he wonders if that guy controlled the mind realm. Hyuk tells him to stop crying like a baby and get up, and asks if he forgot the bet. He has to let him meet the Golden Lich. The Necromancer hands him a letter. Puppet asks if it's just this letter. The protagonist says yes, and to deliver it to the Golden Lich. The branch manager says that although he's in no position to speak after losing, if there's no response to the letter, there's nothing more he can do. Cha tells him not to worry. he'll definitely get a reply. Puppet says that once he gets a reply, he'll contact his inn and wishes him safe travels. Vulcan says the sun's already setting and asks if they should return to the inn and rest. Jin asks what he's talking about. They need to head to the next destination. The Grand Spirit Master asks if there's another place they need to go. Hyuk replies that it's inefficient to just sit and wait for the Golden Lich to show up. At the White Swallow Guild base, a voice says that since they're spending time there, they should fulfill their duties as guild members. In the 10th floor lobby, the blonde girl asks Uni what floor she reached. She replies the 57th. The blonde says she promised new gear if they hit the target this month. Uni tells her to finish eating and climb a few more floors. The blonde says she doesn't get it. Why do they have to hang around the 10th floor lobby? And calls someone a stupid idiot, asking if he'd invade a Holy Land-affiliated guild through the front door. The Necromancer opens the door. They greet him, welcoming him to White Swallow and asking what brings him. The protagonist asks why he's even there. He says climbing the tower is really hard, so he wants to join a guild. The two girls say, oh, he's just someone who wants to join the guild. They were surprised, and think to themselves, wait, if they recommend a newbie to the guild, they'll gain a lot of prestige. They welcome him and ask if someone referred him. Cha replies no. He came because it's a big affiliated guild. The girls smile eerily, thinking it's great. He's a clueless newbie. They ask if he can show some of his skills. Jin talks about his skills and asks for a coin. Uni asks what for but says okay. Hyuk takes the coin and says he'll break it in half. They're shocked, saying he did that with just his hands. It's amazing. The Necromancer asks if he can do basic magic. They ask what kind of magic. He replies yes, he can do basic stuff, like lighting a fire for example, like this one in his hand. They watch, impressed, saying he has many little talents. Uni says that's unbelievable, and his abilities aren't even the most important thing right now. The blonde agrees, saying if they manage to train him, he could even become a leader. And on top of that, he's handsome too. Uni asks if that's her type. The protagonist thinks that bought him some time. Suddenly, they hear a noise and ask what that sound is. Someone rushes in, saying something bad happened. A spirit monster is going wild outside and destroying the village. Everyone who has reached above the 50th floor has been summoned, and he calls for him to come now. The blonde complains it had to be at such a good time and says he should wait there. They'll handle it and come back quickly. The door closes. Cha pulls the curtain, thinking it's time to become Ghostface again. A great mana surrounds him. A voice shouts for everyone to stay away from the trade district. It's dangerous, and items will be destroyed on contact. They say attacks aren't working. Vulcan charges in, shouting for revenge. People think he's acting very strange. The Grand Spirit Master thinks he knows that too. He hasn't acted like this in decades, and this bastard is humiliating him. He'll never forgive him. Jin stomps on a guard, slamming him into a wall and demanding to know where he is. A man arrives, complaining about the noise and asking what the hell is going on, until he sees Jin and is stunned. They ask who that guy is and how he got in. Hyuk chokes the man and says there are many books here, asking if this is the place. He says he's looking for something, and since they're a Holy Land-affiliated guild, he wants a list of the other guilds and their exact locations, obviously to go and destroy them. The man asks if he thinks he'll get away with making enemies of 2 of the 9 stars. The Necromancer thanks him for the concern and says now's the time to worry about someone else, and if he doesn't give the info immediately, he might lose his life. The man's hands start shaking and he says it's on the table. The protagonist thanks him for not wasting his time, throws the man to the floor and grabs the documents. He notes the Pellin brothers, and that these guys are their hands and feet, and tells Kane and Carmen to wait because they'll end up under his feet one by one. He's going to finish them off slowly. Cha sets the floor on fire, the flames growing more intense around the place. Somewhere else, with a candle lit, the Lich says, the next is a report from the 10th floor branch, and asks if it's a puppet. He flips through his papers and a letter falls out. He looks at it and wonders why it was sent separately from the report. After reading the letter, the blonde man says the name Ghostface and wonders how he knows that. Elsewhere, voices say the fire was probably arson, the suspect's identity is unknown, and all witnesses died. The guild leader says the guy trying to join the guild is suspicious and asks for a description. The 2 girls say he was a slim, handsome man with a sharp nose. Uni says his nose was ugly and fat. They look at each other and the blonde remembers him and wonders if it was illusion magic. In another place, Vulcan says he's back. The protagonist says good job and asks if there were lots of scary ghost rumors. The Grand Spirit Master asks if he's joking and asks about him, if he got out undetected. Cha replies of course it's low-grade magic, but it works here. Everyone who looks at him sees someone slightly different. Vulcan asks why he's empty-handed, and what about the other guilds? Jin says everything he needs is in his head. The Grand Spirit Master says, perfect, and asks if he ordered room service. Hyuk says, definitely not. There's a knock at the door. The Necromancer quickly puts on his mask and says he'll open on 3. He counts 1, 2, 3, And as he opens, Vulcan uses his magic to summon chains and restrain the person knocking. The boy falls to the ground. The protagonist says he's from Lich Dorado. The staff member confirms, saying his name is Halcyon and his boss sent him. The Golden Lich himself has come to the 10F floor branch. Somewhere else, Cha is facing multiple guards and asks what's going on. The Lich says he doesn't know how he got the letter's info, but admires his boldness for showing up anyway. But the price will be steep. People who know that info shouldn't exist in the tower. Jin thinks it's been a long time. The company manager orders them to bring him in, but alive. The guards acknowledge. Hyuk asks if they want to play with him. The guards call for formation to stop his attack, but the Necromancer moves quickly, striking one, and asking if they're really going to stand there, discussing dumb tactics in front of him. The guards call for their captain. The protagonist stares them down and eliminates them all, then rushes toward his target. He asks if he wants to fight him. The Golden Lich turns around and begins to move his gold without touching it. Cha wonders if that's the power of gold. He uses a shield to defend and thinks this is the Golden Lich's trait. He consumes gold to use as mana. Jin keeps defending and blasts everything away, asking if that's all he's got. The company manager says of course not. He lifts Hyuk without touching him and says it's a golden wave using most of the branch's gold. No matter how much he dodges, he'll die anyway. Then there's a huge explosion, and he says it's over, until he hears a voice. Not yet. It's the Necromancer, who says he doesn't lose speed contests. The staff member calls out to his master, and the Lich asks if he thinks that's enough to defeat him, and says that if he wanted someone like him, the protagonist interrupts, saying he can't kill him. The protagonist says he still doesn't know the source of the information, which is why he said to capture him, and he will reveal the source. The Golden Lich tells him to follow. They go to another room, and Cha says it's a luxurious room and he must really like money, asking if that's not the case. The company manager releases power from his hand and attacks him, paralyzing him, and says no, that this is a space completely isolated from the outside with his golden power. Not even gods or demons can enter if they want to, and now he should spit out who said it's the auction house's scheme and who the hell it was. The auction house is a huge system to trade items in the tower, but it didn't arise naturally. It was completely established by someone, this someone being the Lich. And if that's revealed, the Golden Lich Company will go bankrupt. The manager is still curious about who told him about this, and Jin says he was joking and that in reality, there's no such person. The Golden Lich summons a weapon and says that if he rips off his limbs, he'll have no problem talking. Just as he's about to attack, Vulcan approaches, breaks the weapon, and what was restraining his master. The company manager looks surprised and asks if that's a spirit soldier, saying only a spiritual master can use a spirit soldier, and not to tell him that The Necromancer removes the mask and asks if he remembers now, saying it's time to repay the debt and calls him by his real name, Willen L. Dudor. The Golden Lich asks if he's been alive all this time and calls him by name. Elsewhere, a voice speaks about attacking the 600th floor, betrayal of the 9 Starborn, a gift from Biel, and the resurrection. The greatest spiritual master wonders if that's the story. The manager says he can't believe he's Cha. He replies that he was also surprised at first. Willen asks what his goal is. The protagonist says that first, he needs to spend a little money from the Golden Lich and needs him to sign a sponsor contract with him. Dudor says he talks about his company like it's his own. Jin replies that it's as if it were. They ask who brought the loot from the upper floors, when he was just a street vendor. He says he's the founder and contributor of the company and its biggest investor. The company manager feels a chill and says it feels like he's talking to Hyuk. He asks if he's serious. Willen says that if it's a contract, he should offer something in return, if it's real. The Necromancer asks what he thinks about the information he's gathered so far and his deductions. Dudor replies that he'll listen and give him a price. The protagonist says the 9 Starborn messed with him personally, and there's someone behind them, and they're also egocentric and don't listen to anyone, and that only 4 powers in the tower could control them like that. The company manager asks if he's talking about the 4 emperors. Chia says they want to protect the superiority of the surface, and when a strange individual from another race starts climbing the tower, their forces are suppressed. That's why they deal with beings that intend to climb the tower or those with potential to reach the top. Willen says those involved have become rulers of relatively high floors. Jin says exactly. And Dudor says, like he said, it's just a deduction. At the moment, he's the only victim. Hyuk asks if he knows about the Oni village on the 100th floor. Vulcan says the only survivor is with them, and her name is Haru, a young member of the Oni tribe. The Golden Lich asks about a young member of the Oni tribe. Elsewhere, the girl is ripping off beasts' heads and thinks it's still not enough to defeat him. The system notifies that the time is up and the trial of the 10th floor failed to reach the objective, and she was forcibly sent to the safe zone of the 9th floor. Harry thinks that to see her companion again, she must become much stronger than she is now. A floating boy asks why she's grumbling so much and suggests using this saying if she wants to return to him, leave it to him, and it'll be easy to beat the orc warrior, and asks if she doesn't agree. The girl replies she can't use the power of the dragon-slaying sword and thinks she made a promise to him and must grow stronger by herself, and tells him not to talk to her, or he'll only irritate her. A voice then asks if she doesn't find it strange, saying the only thing the Onis managed to save from this disaster was a brat and a sword. The branch manager asks if their goal was a girl and a sword. The protagonist answers that's right. They wiped out all the Onis just to eliminate that brat and are targeting the youngest ones. Willen thinks that's absurd and that they're tampering with the tower's foundations, but if it's true, then it all makes sense. Cha says his goal is revenge against the 9 Starborn, and if the 4 emperors are involved, he'll eliminate them all, including those who wiped out his family. Duder remembers when he was a child and it was raining, and he was surrounded by the dead. In real time, the barrier around them begins to break. The apex of all evil asks what they were talking about. The 9-tailed fox asks if he likes men. Jin says to stop ruining the mood and calls them bastards. The golden lich says that was very well done and accepts his deduction. Hyuk says it was a great choice. The company manager says he'll only believe it if he proves who he is right now. The necromancer says he thought he had earned some trust and asks if he really needs to do this. Willen says he's a merchant, trust is a resource, and half-assed trust can't buy or sell anything. The protagonist says it's a pain and calls BAL, asking if he can confirm his identity and shake his hand. The apex of all evil screams about who guarantees something like a handshake, saying he'll think about it 3 times. Cha gets annoyed and asks about the 3 times. Then the apex of all evil quickly says he is who he claims to be and tells them to clear up any doubts, swearing by his name. Duder says there's no denying it now and agrees to trust him, saying it's good to see him again and calls him Ghostface. Jin says someday they'll call him by his real names. Then he already has his first request for his sponsor. The Golden Lich says to ask, and if it can be bought with money, he'll do it immediately. Hyuk says they need all the weapon types that exist in the tower, as many as possible. The company manager says he's a spiritual master and asks why he needs that and if he's going to war on the 10th floor. The necromancer asks if he's ever heard of versatility, and the system opens his status. Willen, surprised, asks if versatile is the name of a class. The protagonist replies that it's something that gives him any talent. Even if he holds a weapon for the first time, he'll have mastery with it like he's used it for years. Duder thinks that if that's true, Cha is stronger now than in the past. Even if he's weak at the moment, his potential is unmatched. So his job is to exploit that potential, and he asks if the puppet is around. He opens the door and says yes, and asks if they're done talking. Jin tells him to gather all weapons from the 10th floor and mix the names of other merchants so they won't be exposed, and also to give them a VIP pass. Later, the two are standing, and a voice apologizes for making them wait. The branch manager says he brought what was requested. Hyuk asks what he means by everything, since it's just a piece of clothing and he asked for more than one weapon. The puppet replies, no, it's all inside. The necromancer asks, inside? The golden lich says the name of that clothing is spatial robe, and its lining is connected to a subspace. It can store as many items as a large warehouse and can change temperature, size, and color according to the user's wishes. It also has a magic that protects the user, and equipment effects are automatically applied if they're stored inside. It's a rare item that few possess in the tower and should be used carefully. The protagonist replies that he does need to be careful since he has to cover his expenses anyway. Elsewhere, someone steps out of a portal. It's Kim, saying he's alive and thought he'd die. His friend says he didn't receive any achievement because it was a group challenge, but he survived thanks to Sungtae's support item. Another teammate lying on the ground asks if he spent all the money there on the 10th floor and how they're going to climb the tower now. Seong says to relax. There's a branch of the White Swallow on the 10th floor, and if he finds his older brother, the climb will go even better. He thinks about the guy from the first floor who apparently became a super rookie called Ghostface. For daring to intimidate and embarrass him, he'll pay for it. He tells them let's go, because from now on, they'll fight for revenge. Until they look around in shock, seeing the burned houses. Kim says that's what happened. The other guild members evacuated to the 30th floor, he lost contact with his brother, and asks what they'll do now. His 2 partners say they're not strong enough yet and don't have money, and it'll be impossible to climb to the 30th floor like this. But they trust him and will follow him. And to start by leaving his brother aside, he has no skills, and asks what he'll do. Kim thinks these useless guys are noisy. He wonders why he's even with them and thinks they're good for nothing, and wouldn't get past the 10th floor without him. At this rate, he might as well take care of them. An animal approaches, and they ask what that is, and if it's a fox. Seong tells it to scram and says there's no food. The animal keeps approaching him and licks his foot. Kim says it's disgusting and tells it to get lost. He kicks the animal away, calling it a little shitworm. The fox falls to the ground injured. Seong approaches and says it was just in time. He was really stressed. He keeps kicking the animal nonstop, calling it a curse and asking why him. Kim keeps hitting it and says nothing good ever happens. His life is shit, and the only thing near him is a stray mutt. He has absolutely no luck. Then a light appears. A sword is thrown and cuts the leg he was using to kick the animal. Seung is frightened, and someone with a massive aura says, "What's this?" and that if he does it again, it'll take longer to heal. Kim complains about his leg and asks what the hell he did. The voice asks if he's talking to him. It's the protagonist, who says the fox he was trampling belongs to him. Somewhere else, Cha says this is the last one. Vulcan asks where he's going. He replies he's going to the class change hall and needs to obtain spiritual power. The spirit soldier asks why, since he's already a spiritual master. Jin answers that this class change is like a combination of polymath with past life memories, but you can't get spiritual power through training. Vulcan says he gets it now. He hadn't realized that. Hyuk tells him to rest well tonight using the Golden Lich's money. The nine-tailed fox senses something. The apex of all evil asks them to look over there. They look. The necromancer asks what she's doing. The nine-tailed fox is asking for help, saying her cub is in danger. That's when he throws a sword and cuts the boy's leg. The protagonist thinks he never imagined he'd find the cub of a nine-tailed fox, a mythical beast, in a place like this. A mission appears too. Save the cub, and after rescuing it, take care of it. The reward is a fox item that increases favorability with the fox. The first reward is given after the rescue, the second after the cub's recovery. Cha thinks it's an unexpected stroke of luck. Kim recognizes his mask and asks if he's Ghostface. Jin asks where he's seen him before. Seung asks if that's how he plans to provoke him and orders his partners to catch him. Hyuk glares at them. He moves quickly. The boys look around confused, asking where he went. The necromancer is running with the fox in his arms. He asks if they were stomping on it without even knowing what it was, and says that must have been their last bit of luck. Kim says screw that, he'll cut off his leg just the same. The protagonist asks the nine-tailed fox what to do with them. The fox says to eliminate them. The three boys still insist on attacking, and Seung orders them not to let him escape. Cha says now he's going to return what fell on the ground earlier. He throws the severed leg at his opponent. Kim wonders if he just threw his cut-off leg. Magic begins to surge from Jin and he uses corpse explosion, causing a massive impact. He asks if the cub in his arms is the baby of the nine-tailed fox. The cub smiles. Elsewhere, the fox is healed and they ask what to do now. They say to give it a first name and ask why not just keep calling it Baby Fox. Hyuk asks how about calling it Little Dog instead of Baby Fox. Vulcan says the fox will probably want to rip his head off if he calls her that. The nine-tailed fox furiously waves her paw. The necromancer asks if anyone has an idea. The spirit soldier says he'll show off his naming sense from years of experience and already has it. With the phrase shining growing fox, he makes an anagram from fox and brilliant and asks how about Horan. He says if they don't like it, just say so. The protagonist says he'll call her Miho for her two tails and asks if that's better. Vulcan says it's like this spoiled fox actually liked it. The cub smiles and looks excited. Cha says it seems she liked it. The system notifies that the first part of the mission is complete. Miho, the cub of the nine-tailed fox, was rescued. Rewards received. A light shines. Jin watches closely. The reward is a fox mask. When equipped, it allows the user to use the fox's ability. As the mask's owner gets stronger, the mask's ability also becomes stronger. Hyuk notices it's similar to the Oni mask, and if it's a fox ability, there could be many options. But in the end, it'll definitely be charm, and there's no better ability to defeat an enemy without even touching them. The nine-tailed fox says there are still more missions, and not to forget about recovering life force. The necromancer asks about life force and what he needs to do. Part 2 of the mission: to restore Miho's power, you must give her 999 fresh livers, with rewards being increased favorability with the nine-tailed fox and a power boost. The spirit soldier asks about 999 livers, and the necromancer says they also have to be fresh, asking if he himself is going to have to hunt them. He thinks that if he considers it the price of the mask, he can't ignore it. He asks if there will be benefits for the favorability, and says he's looking forward to it. The nine-tailed fox tells him not to ask obvious things. Vulcan says it's all good then, he's going to take a walk. The protagonist says he'll head to the class change hall at dawn, and if he thinks he'll be late, just go straight there. The spirit soldier moves then stops, thinking that, as expected, things really change when climbing the tower. He feels a strange sensation and thinks it's impossible. Then he notices something. It's a dragon, those horns and wild mana, no doubt about it. The dragon sighs and says the dragons will eliminate everyone. Vulcan looks shocked and wonders if the dragons will really eliminate everyone, thinking dragons are a race with narcissistic love for their species, full of pride among the four emperors, and they don't forgive anyone who dares speak about them. And now dragons have reached the 10th floor. People nearby comment that the dragon is standing there again, and it's been days, just complaining about things they don't understand. The spirit soldier wonders about these days and why the dragons haven't done anything. The dragon notices something, and Vulcan wonders if it sensed his mana. The dragon says it's him, the suspicious evil spirit wandering around. The spirit soldier asks about evil spirit. He leaps forward, saying he saw that the dragon didn't recognize his power and will put him in his place, calling him a little dragon. The dragon grits its teeth and asks how he dares, and if he just called him a dragon, and if he's desperate to die. In the exterior magic tower on the 10th floor, the protagonist realizes his soldier hasn't returned and wonders where he is and what he's doing, since he isn't even answering telepathy. Cha opens the door and asks if there's nothing going on. A voice welcomes him and introduces himself as the one in charge of the exterior magic tower named Ken, a climber. Jin says it seems pretty quiet around there. The supervisor says few people awaken mana on the 10th floor, so it's peaceful. Flies are his only companions. Hyuk says he wants to use the necromancy room and asks if that's possible. Ken replies yes, but to prove he awakened mana, he needs to fill a crystal orb with it. The necromancer asks if he just has to pour in mana, and the supervisor confirms. Just think about using magic and relax. The protagonist places his hand on the item and releases extremely intense magic. Ken thinks this is absurd. A 10th floor climber with that much mana? The orb begins to crack and shatters. The supervisor comments on the orb breaking and says he can't believe it. Cha asks about the necromancy room. Elsewhere, spirit soldiers are summoned and the dragon is attacking. Vulcan watches and thinks this is bad. Without Jin, there's a limit to how much mana and how many souls he can use. The dragon asks how long he'll hide behind spirits. It's time to come out. People nearby notice his horn and that there's no doubt it's a dragon. He looks back and calls them bastards, asking who they're calling that. They start running. The spirit soldier thinks this guy is definitely a dragon, but very sensitive about being called one, as if his body and soul weren't from the same person, and wonders if that's even possible. He remembers his master and wonders if he'd say his investigator curiosity is boiling. So, Vulcan summons a weapon. The dragon wonders if his soul turned into a weapon. The spirit soldier says he has to see with his own eyes what's inside him, and uses his spiritual laser to strike. The dragon dodges but still gets a piece of his clothes torn and says he's not just any evil spirit. Vulcan says magic that consumes spirit as mana, spiritual power, is an ability not even trash like him can use, and this body is of the first spiritual master, and he'll regret attacking him. The spirit soldier attacks, but the dragon dodges everything and asks if that's his name. Great, then attacks and Vulcan blocks. The dragon says he's the Dragon Slayer Hendrik, and that's the name of the human who will eliminate him. The spirit soldier asks if he's a dragon slayer. Dragon Slayer is a title for those who hunt dragons, a very strong soul, as if they were in a dragon's body. Hendrik uses the Dragon King's flow. Vulcan backs off and thinks he let his guard down because it was a young dragon. If what's inside is the soul of a climber from floor 780 or a dragon slayer, even if his master came, victory still wouldn't be guaranteed. He unleashes a great amount of mana into his weapon, and the Dragon Slayer asks if he thinks that will help. The spirit soldier uses his spiritual chains, drawing in a massive amount of mana around his opponent's body to restrain him, but Hendrik breaks free and uses his full moon ability. Then he notices something. Beside him, the mana has gathered and transformed into a giant hand. He looks surprised as everything around him begins to be destroyed by the giant hand. Vulcan thinks that was close. He spent all the souls and mana his master gave him, and this guy won't be able to move for now, but this is his chance, and he's getting out of there. Smoke spreads across the area, and the giant hand begins to dissolve. The Dragon Slayer manages to escape and asks if his name was Vulcan. Hendrik starts laughing and says, "It's fine. Next time he'll slice him up," and he swears it. Elsewhere, the protagonist says there are a lot of rooms. Ken replies that yes, after all, there's a wide variety of magical paths, and wonders who this person is. If they're really only on the 10th floor, but even he who made it to the 35th couldn't go against him. And Cha wonders if that guy said his name was Ken, thinking he's an okay mage and quite useful as a guide. The supervisor says this is the necromancy room. Jin looks around, floating books and incredible mana, and thinks reagents, corpses, and books. This is the kind of room necromancers dream of. Ken says if he needs anything, just let him know. He replies, of course. Then a voice says to begin. The fox walks forward and is startled by something ahead. It's the spirit soldier. Hyuk asks where he was. Vulcan says not to worry, he just went a bit too hard on his morning workout, and it looks like it's about to start. The protagonist replies yes, if he wants to use the spirit's power like him. Spirit soldiers to work. The soldiers grab books and draw on the floor with chalk. They light candles and Cha stands in the center of a circle. Miho looks confused. Vulcan picks her up and says they need to stay back. Jin says this might be his last command, so listen closely. Protect his body until he wakes up. The spirit soldier says to be careful. If he's eliminated, he'll take his body. A spirit rises above Hyuk's body with a great aura and enters him. The cub looks worried, but Vulcan tells her not to worry. He's doing fine. He thinks spiritual power is a crucial trait for necromancer-type mages, allowing them to use souls as if they were mana. The fastest way to awaken spiritual power is to be in a soul state. In other words, he has to die once. The necromancer closes his eyes, and the spirit soldier says he thinks he's entered the soul world. A voice says the word body and demands it, saying, "Give the body." Vulcan says it's begun. Amana asks for a healthy body to live again, that it's his, and tells everyone to move aside, that he's old and just wants to reach nirvana. The spirit soldier calls the other soldiers, saying the master is defenseless, and they need to protect him from the fallen. The soldiers move toward the enemy, telling it to let go. Vulcan uses his spiritual ray, and Ken calls out, "Sir," and asks what's with all the noise. He sees the monsters fighting and asks what the heck is going on. This is chaos. The spirit soldier asks if he's the manager here and tells him to help. Miho is trembling and hiding. He opens his eyes and looks to the side, spotting the opponent and saying, "They forgot to defend that side, idiots." Ken tells them to look over there, toward the climber. The spirit soldier grumbles for the idiot to wake up or he'll lose the body. The cub runs toward the enemy, releasing a powerful light and attacking. Vulcan calls out to the cub and the manager asks what that light is. The enemies ask what kind of creature that is and where it came from. They look at it and say it's so cute. The tail is so fluffy, cute, adorable, and beautiful. The spirit soldier says they are too. Ken asks what that adorable thing is. Vulcan tells him to quit it and snap out of it and wonders if this is charm, an ability that can control the desires of the target. And it also has the power to capture a soul, and he wonders if maybe she's different because she has the plasma of a god. A skull says it's noisy and a total mess. The spirit soldier thinks that's a named, someone who reached the upper floors of the tower before dying, and it'll be dangerous if it possesses his master's body. The skull notices a fresh body. Vulcan moves and thinks he needs to stop it. Then he falls to the ground and realizes he's still under the effects of the charm. He can't gather his strength and yells to the cub, saying he needs her to stop it. Miho steps in front of him and the skull tells her to move since he's not interested in her and calls her a furball. The cub runs, jumps at him, and releases a great burst of energy. The skull says this energy is that of a mystical creature. Miho can't hold on. The spirit soldier thinks it can't be, and wonders if she already used up all her power. The charm was the limit. The skull raises his weapon and wants to know how such a pathetic creature caused him so much fear. The cub closes her eyes in fear of being struck. Someone uses magic to stop the blow. Vulcan watches, surprised, and the protagonist thanks the cub and says he'll eliminate the damn ghost. The skull calls upon its spiritual body. Cha says that even if it's a ghost, it'll serve well as a bullet. He unleashes his energy at them. The skull asks how that bastard dares. Hyuk continues releasing energy, using his soul projectile ability from his 10 fingers, destroying the ghost and causing a massive explosion. Vulcan gets excited and asks if he gathered spiritual power in his fingertips and fired it, saying it's so simple and powerful. Everything is destroyed. The necromancer removes his mask and asks if it wasn't that bad. Ken is passed out. The puppet looks shocked and asks what he did to leave the tower in this state. The protagonist says explaining it would take too long and asks why he's here. The branch manager says he came to deliver something. Among the items he requested, there were a few he couldn't store in the subspace coat. They include deadly poisons of varying potency, a firestone containing fire energy, and an ice stone containing ice energy. Vulcan says he prepared everything faster than expected. Cha through puppet, and asks if he hadn't said he'd use that for raids above the 100th floor. The puppet replies that's right, and this delivery is his last task as the 10th floor branch manager. After this, he'll climb the tower again. Jin asks why. The branch manager says he felt the need to grow stronger. As a merchant, he made reaching the top his goal, and between Gold Lich and Ghostface, he realized this is someone who will bring big changes to the tower. Among those changes, with skills of someone who reached the 100th floor, he can't say he's the better merchant. Hyuk says that's a good determination and thinks how similar he is. Then he watches them walk away. Vulcan says he's gone. The necromancer with the briefcase in hand asks if he now has to fill it with those little things. The spirit soldier says he's not going to do it. The protagonist says, of course he will, and asks if there's any reason not to, saying his gluttony trait will turn the power of what he eats into strength, and asks if he's not curious to know what he'll get after eating it all. Ken opens his eyes and says, that's dangerous. Vulcan says he finally woke up. The supervisor asks what happened to the mage and the fox. The spirit soldier says not to worry, they're fine, and then asks, or maybe not. Ken apologizes and asks what he meant. Then someone screams loudly, it's Cha, breathing fire after swallowing crystals. The cub is frightened, and the nine-tailed fox is worried about her cub, telling him not to show things like that in front of that child. Jin activates his gluttony ability, swallowing all that energy. After swallowing everything, smoke comes out of his mouth. The system notifies that he gained burn resistance. Hyuk asks if now all that's left is poison resistance. Later, after many monsters are eliminated, the Necromancer complains that his stomach hurts. Vulcan asks why he was torturing himself. The protagonist asks what he means by torture. He needed that. The spirit soldier says he actually managed to take in all that poison, calling him a resilient idiot. Cha says he already told them. He has to prepare his body quickly, including for the combat techniques of the 9 stars, and he has to gain resistance to a variety of things, especially poison. Among the 9 stars, there's a bastard specialized in poison, and if he'd noticed the tricks before, he wouldn't have been eliminated so terribly. A soldier approaches, and Vulcan notices and asks if those are all the orcs in the area. Jin says the cub has waited long enough and tells her to go eat. The spirit soldier asks if they don't need to remove the livers from them. Hyuk agrees, saying she's still a baby if you consider her as a human. Maiho opens her mouth with sharp teeth and eats them without any difficulty. The system notifies that she has eaten 127 raw livers. Elsewhere, the Necromancer says that if he could, he would have already created a wave of monsters. But since they're in a big city, he doesn't think it's a good idea to draw attention. By the way, he asks who Vulcan was fighting last night. Vulcan asks how he knew. The protagonist replies that his mana was unstable, of course he'd notice, and asks who the bastard was and if he found one of the 4 emperors. The spirit soldier says he guessed right. He fought a dragon. He was quite strong, but it all went fine because he managed to immobilize him with spiritual power. Cha's mana flares up, and he asks if one of the 4 emperors is there. Vulcan tells him to calm down and not release demonic energy in the middle of the street. Jin coughs plasma and asks if that's a side effect of gluttony. The spirit soldier tells him to take it easy, and it wasn't an ordinary dragon. Hyuk asks what he means. After a while, Vulcan tells everything that happened, and the Necromancer reflects on the dragon slayer Hendrik. The spirit soldier says that's exactly what he said. The protagonist says it doesn't make sense for a body and soul to act separately. Vulcan says that's exactly it. He was against that principle too, but now he's seeing an example right in front of him. Cha says he gets it, and if it really is Hendrik, the dragon slayer, he knows the name well. At the start of his climb, Hendrik hunted young dragons and finished off any dragon that came after him, a monster who earned the title of Dragon Slayer. He heard that he was eliminated somewhere around the 700th or 800th floor. Vulcan says that given his situation, this might be a trap from the 4 emperors. Jin says he should find him soon. He starts coughing again, and the spirit soldier says he overdid it. His gluttony trait is broken, but there's still a penalty for consuming items: the poison and the fire and ice stones. If he wants to recover quickly from internal injuries, he should have gotten treated. Hyuk asks, treated? By a priest? And if he's gone crazy, and if he wants him and his spirit soldiers to be purified by divine power, the spirit soldier asks what he's going to do then. If he keeps going like this, he'll be coughing up plasma all over. The Necromancer says the best way is to acquire divine power himself. Vulcan says that's insane and calls him an idiot. The cub starts growling. The protagonist asks what's wrong. Miho emits a loud sound and Cha is startled, asking why she suddenly started acting like that, says his ears hurt, and tells her to be quiet. The spirit soldier notices something and calls to him, saying there's something wrong with those people, and asks what's going on with them. Aren't they being affected by Miho's howls? He says he doesn't know why, but they're all walking together unconsciously. A large circle of energy appears behind them. Jin looks back and someone approaches, saying it's a pleasure to meet him, and calls him by name, Ghostface. Hyuk realizes it's an angel and asks if that's a pleasure to meet him, then says this isn't what he thinks it is and attacks. The angel blocks and tells him not to do something he'll regret. The Necromancer notices how fast she is. The angel says she'll greet him again. It's a pleasure to meet you. The protagonist notices she's strong. She didn't even flinch. The angel touches his face and says his mouth is rotting on the inside. His throat, stomach, and intestines are all damaged. Cha asks what she's doing now. Her crown begins to shine brightly. Jin gets scared, and Vulcan calls her a bitch and asks what she did. Hyuk notices all his wounds are healed and is sure this is angelic power, divine power. The angel asks if he understands now that she didn't come as his enemy. She introduces herself as Uriel and says she's an angel from the wingless. Then a sound is heard, someone's eyes widen. The people return to normal and ask what they were doing and what time it is. At the hotel, the maid comes back to herself and says it feels like she was out of it for a while. Her friend asks, seriously? Says she felt the same and wonders if they've been working too hard. Somewhere else, the protagonist watches secretly and asks what she did. The angel replies that she slightly altered their memories and did it to protect the people of this place. It would be bad if angels heard rumors about him and invaded the 10th floor. Cha thinks her methods might be extreme, but not careless. Not bad at all. He says the memory alteration was actually well done and asks if she ever used it on herself or if she's being affected right now. Uriel says not to worry. It's impossible to use that power on someone with an ego as strong as his, or like that cute, mystical creature. She looks to the side and comments on that spirit friend of his who's been staring at her from the beginning. Vulcan says he knew she could see him. Hyuk asks why she came after them. The angel says that the one who wears the mask of terror and defies the heavens, even if he and his followers are weak, will eventually succeed. And the reason she's after him is because of a prophecy passed down among the wingless. The Necromancer asks if she was sent by God. Uriel replies it's something like that. The protagonist thinks that the one who wears the mask of terror is probably referring to himself and asks what this group wingless is, saying he's never heard of it. The angel removes the cloth wrapped around her, letting it fall to the ground. Cha looks surprised to see her wings. Uriel explains that the angels have gone completely mad, blinded by greed, and those who go against them are branded sinners and exiled. When an angel sins and is banished, they're punished by having their wings, the symbol of angels, ripped off. In short, she was an angel and no longer is. The wingless is a group formed by people like her, angels banished from Utopia, the city of angels. According to the prophecy, he will attempt to bring destruction to the reign of the four emperors. The wingless wish to support that goal. Jin closes his eyes, activating telepathy, and asks what they should do. Vulcan asks what he means, says she doesn't seem to be lying, and tells him to just accept it. Hyuk asks how the wingless can help. Uriel replies that they can't. The Necromancer looks surprised. The angel says that the power the wingless possess is immense, but because of that, Utopia sees them as enemies and watches their every move. Their support would also bring hostility from the angels. The protagonist thinks they're a double-edged sword. Losing an army of ex-angels would be a waste, but accepting them is extremely risky. He says that even facing those risks, if a situation arises where he needs the wingless's power, he asks if they'll help him. Uriel responds that it would be their pleasure. Cha says that's great. The alliance is made. The angel bows and thanks them. Jin thinks it's true and he still hasn't introduced himself. He asks if she can hide them from gods and demons. She replies that only for a short moment. Uriel pulls one of her wings and blows on it. They appear in a different place. Hyuk notices the effect is similar to a skill the Lich used and asks if those bastards really can't hear them. She replies yes, even if you curse them, they won't hear it. The Necromancer removes his mask and says he's going to test that, calling Baal a sick stalker bastard and asking if he can hear him. The angel is startled by the words. The protagonist laughs and says it worked. Uriel asks why he requested the space. Cha asks if now that they're in the same boat, doesn't it seem unfair to keep using a false name and a mask? He introduces himself by name and says he was once known as the Star of Elimination 10 years ago. The angel widens her eyes and repeats his name. She kneels and apologizes for her incompetence. Hyuk tells her to wait. She knows about what happened 10 years ago when he was eliminated. Uriel says that 10 years ago, at the place where his elimination was being discussed, she was there. The Necromancer stares at her, stomps the ground hard enough to crack it, and tells her to be very careful with what she says next. The angel asks if he knows what happens when someone reaches the 99th floor of the tower. The protagonist, irritated, says they probably become one of those lunatics, a transcendent, a god, or a demon that controls the tower. Uriel explains that not angels. The four emperors are devoured by their own sense of superiority and try to monopolize the position, so they eliminate anyone who tries to conquer the tower, unless it's one of them. Cha asks if it's selective elimination. The angel asks if he knew. Jin replies that it was a theory, but now he's sure one of the people behind it is standing right in front of him, and says he'll send her head back to where her wings were taken. He releases his mana and starts choking her. Uriel says that's exactly why she became one of the wingless. Hyuk asks what she means. The angel replies that she became wingless 10 years ago because she opposed a selective elimination targeting a certain challenger, and his name was the Star of Elimination, which was him. The Necromancer calms down and says he was rude and apologizes. She replies that it's okay, it's a burden she must carry. The protagonist tells her not to think that way. He doesn't want to direct his anger toward her and understands that angels and the wingless are different kinds of beings. Uriel thanks him for understanding and says that, like them, there must be other victims of the four emperors. And if they approach him, she recommends that he also accept them. Cha says that no matter where he goes, there are always many kinds of people, and he's sure there are others who were exiled by the four emperors. If they manage to recruit them, they'd be a great support in the war against the four emperors. He asks where he needs to go to find her. The angel replies that the base of the wingless is in the City of Dreams on the 190th floor. Jin asks about the 190th floor and says they're lower than he expected. Uriel responds that the higher the floor, the more influence the four emperors have, and the floors from 200 to 300 are ruled by him. Hyuk says he understands and realizes he forgot about that. that he controls those floors. The martial emperor Tess is the one who reigns over floors 200 to 300. If the four emperors establish a base in his territory, there's a high chance they'll be destroyed by Tess. The angel asks if it's not rude whether he could get dressed. He replies, of course. Uriel picks up her coat from the ground. The necromancer watches her and says that if she gave him something, there would be a trace. The angel responds no, but due to the angel's pursuit, she could only come alone. The protagonist says it's fine. That's enough. Uriel asks if he's that kind of person. Cha replies that it's not that. He meant her wings. He wanted some of her feathers. The angel replies that if that's the case, she can give them, since they grow back. Jin thinks he asked carefully because he imagined they wouldn't grow back. Uriel hands him several feathers and tells him never to show them outside. Angels have an ability that lets them locate the owner of a feather. Hyuk tells her not to worry, since his plan is to eat them. She doesn't quite understand and asks about eating, then says, so he is that kind of person. The necromancer replies that he already said he's not. The angel says she'll trust him and be going, and that she'll see him in the city of dreams. The protagonist says yes, and that he'll live up to her expectations. Uriel says she'll be waiting for that. She walks away and disappears. The fox approaches him and Vulcan asks if he's going to eat that now. Cha replies of course he's so eager he can't wait. He thinks he's curious if he can endure the divine power of angels, and if he can, wonders what power he might gain. The soldier says he can do whatever he wants. He gave up on him when he drank those poisons. He reaches out and picks up the cub, saying he can't go around eating everything he finds just like his owner. Jin swallows the feathers, closes his eyes, feels something strange, and starts screaming in pain. Vulcan says it's fine. He's calm and doesn't care. He picks up Miho and tells her to play while that guy stays like that. Hyuk keeps muttering, then starts screaming loudly again until he faints, and ends up somewhere else. The necromancer opens his eyes, sits up and asks if he passed out, wonders if this is the mind realm, and thinks maybe his body decided the divine power was too much for now, so he needs to win here. Then, a light shines. The protagonist looks back and asks if that's a waterfall. He looks around, everything glowing, and thinks this is all the divine power inside him. This thing is massive. A single feather holds so much power. He wonders if he should be glad he doesn't have to fight it, but then thinks no. Even if he won and devoured its body, there's no need to think about that. Then Cha notices the water level is rising and asks if the waterfall is just an illusion, and thinks he needs to cross that waterfall of divine power before it floods the mind realm and wonders how he'll do it. What should he do? Jin says there's only one way. Outside the mind realm, Vulcan notices something, a mana over his master's body, and thinks he used spiritual power, but it feels different. He's using his own soul as fuel for spiritual power. Miho looks discouraged. The spirit soldier says to believe in him. If he moved, it means he has a plan. The cub remains down and deeply worried. Vulcan thinks not to believe he's the only one excited to see his potential. Now he's about to see how he'll surprise him this time. In the mind realm, Hyun is trying to suck up the water with a pipe in his mouth, but realizes that's not it either. He thinks he needs to create an image of his soul containing divine power. He imagined that creating his image consuming it would be correct, since he obtained this power through gluttony. But if he keeps going like this, he'll fail. If divine power takes over, he'll have to choose between losing his consciousness forever or giving up on this power. He wonders why he started panicking and realizes this is an image created using his soul. It should act like him. The necromancer begins to release a massive amount of mana, summoning a whale, saying that now it's going to get serious. The protagonist faces the whale and smiles. Sounds echo, and Cha thinks, yes, this is it. The whale moves swiftly, swallowing all the water. Jin grins wickedly and thinks, more, more. He keeps laughing loudly while using his mana intensely. Outside the mind realm, Hyuk is lying on the ground, smiling. The apex of all evil claps excitedly and says he's found someone just like him, congratulating the birth of the demon king of gluttony. He recalls when a man said that Baal meant that to him, for to himself, Baal is a neutral god who causes trouble. As his name suggests, he has great greed, exploiting all races, and as if that weren't enough, he's a crazy dragon who wants to eat everything in the world. His divine name is Greedy Dragon, and his real name is… Back in the mind realm, the necromancer activates his greed ability. In real time, Vulcan says it looks like he's back. The cub gets excited and runs toward him. The protagonist asks if he returned. The great spiritual master replies yes and asks if he got what he wanted or failed. If he failed, he's going to mock him hard. Cha says it's a shame, and of course he succeeded. He shows the energy in his hands and says that, although it's only the size of a seed, he created an organ capable of producing divine power, and asks what they think. Vulcan thinks that for a mere human, who isn't one of the four emperors, to hold the power of angels in his body, if the angels find out, it wouldn't be surprising if they gave him a yes sentence. Jin says that with their pride wounded, they won't settle for an elimination order, and it wouldn't be surprising if the entire race came after him. The great spiritual master thinks this is an unbelievable result, but a dangerous one. He's not strong enough to survive the four emperors in his current incomplete state. And if he goes against them, a few days later, 10th floor, hunting ground. The spirit soldiers are fighting monsters and defeating them until one of the monsters glares at them with his axe. The spirit soldiers charge at him, and the enemy slices through them. Vulcan watches from atop a cliff. Hyuk approaches him and says, "It's begun." The monster cuts the soldiers in half and gets excited by it. But a great light shines from inside the spirit soldier's body. The monster is confused, and a hand emerges from the spirit soldier's body. A spiritual angel emerges. On the cliff, the necromancer asks what he thinks of his new holy soul soldier. The great spiritual master replies it works as expected. It's a healer exclusively for undead and spirit soldiers. It completely negates the basic concept of necromancy, where matter is lost due to the weak resistance of summoned beings. However, since divine power is divine, it seeks enlightenment. The protagonist says all they can do is be cautious. Monsters are piled up as the cub sits on top of them, happily eating their livers. Vulcan says it looks like she enjoyed lunch. Cha asks if it was good and says they'll probably run out tomorrow. The system notifies that she's already eaten 892 livers. He says who would have thought he'd earn the Orc Slayer title twice? Jin opens his status window. He observes all his stats and notices that over the last few days his seed of divine power has grown a bit, gaining 2 more points. With a total of 3, it's not that useful, but in an emergency he can use it once. Vulcan asks what they'll do now. Hyuk mentions Hendrik and says they should find him, asks if that's right. The great spiritual master replies yes. After that, he never left that place. He's not climbing, it's like he's waiting for someone. The necromancer thinks that Hendrik is a dragon slayer using a dragon's body, which is good since he's looking for him. And if he's stuck on the 10th floor, there must be a reason. Like the angel, maybe he's waiting for something after hearing the gods and demons. Vulcan says they've arrived. Once they leave this alley, they'll see him. The protagonist walks out and spots him. He sees it really is a dragon. He asks if they should approach. The great spiritual master says to wait and asks if he's really going to talk to him like that. He says maybe Hendrik isn't waiting for him, and if they anger him, it could be their end. Cha asks if they can't just settle it by fighting. Vulcan says he's crazy and he's not going. Jin says he knew he was scared, just because he got beat up last time. The great spiritual master asks who got beat up. He never did. Jin calls him a liar and says he ran off without even looking back. The Dragon Slayer hears them talking, closes his eyes, and remembers a wounded man. And on the 10th floor, that one who will make his wish come true will appear, and he will wait. Hyuk approaches and asks if he's Hendrik. He replies that's right, and he was wondering how long it would take for him to come talk to him, and says there's a familiar face too. And the first test is cleared. The necromancer says he doesn't like being judged so directly, but will let it go since he said he passed. The Dragon Slayer says there are too many eyes here and tells them to follow. They walk and arrive. The protagonist asks if this isn't just a dead-end alley and says there are many alleys near the plaza, why come so far? Hendrik opens a portal and enters. Cha says to follow him. They go in. The protagonist asks what this is. The Dragon Slayer replies that it's a kind of subspace, a secret space within the 10th floor. Gods and demons can't see anything there. Cha thinks he understands and can feel that this place has been weakened. Hendrik says he wants to ask something. He's going to eradicate all the dragons that eliminated him in this tower, and asks if he's prepared to achieve that goal with him. Jin smiles and asks if, for a man, that dream isn't too small. The Dragon Slayer asks what the hell he just said. Too small. The great spiritual master calls out to his partner and says he's a monster on another level, asking why he's provoking him. Through telepathy, Hyuk tells him to stay calm because he has a plan. He says he doesn't know Hendrik's full situation, but he can guess how he ended up like that. And he's sure Hendrik knows. The bastards who eliminated them weren't just the 4 emperors. He doesn't care why Hendrik became obsessed with dragons, but just that alone isn't enough for him. He's going to eliminate every damn one who conspired against him. Anyone, even if it's one of the 4 emperors. In other words, his goal is too small to form an alliance. Hendrik asks if he really intends to attack the 4 emperors. The necromancer says they're the same, both eliminated but still alive, and those bastards are the ones responsible for that and asks if he needs to say more. Vulcan watches, confused. The Dragon Slayer bursts out laughing. The protagonist asks if he gets it now. Hendrik says he understands that he's right and apologizes. He's certain now that he's the one from the prophecy Uriel mentioned. Cha wonders if the Wingless already talked to Hendrik before. The Dragon Slayer says that's great, and that he'll personally test whether his resolve is real or just a bluff. The one who plots against the will of God. He asks his name. Jin replies saying his name and that he's known as the Star of the End. An old man calls him a damned lizard and asks if he's stirring up trouble again by coming here, and if he hadn't finished what he came to do already. Hendrik gets disheartened and says he showed up. Hyuk asks who he is. Then his eyes widen. The Dragon Slayer says he's the blacksmith who lives here. He also made his sword. The blacksmith confirms it and says Hendrik should have left after getting the sword, asking why he came back. The Necromancer thinks it's impossible. He's an Oni. The blacksmith says it's an exotic combo, a spirit and a mystical creature, and asks who the tanned brat is. The protagonist asks how he's still alive. The old man calls him a brat and says to show more respect to his elders. He's still alive. Is that a problem? Cha says, wait, that's not what he meant. He's asking how he survived that disaster. The blacksmith raises his weapon to strike and asks if he was the one who burned his village. Someone grabs his arm, stopping him. It's Hendrik. The old man tells him to let go. The bastard burned his village. The Dragon Slayer tells him to calm down because that man has a story just like his. Vulcan asks if by any chance he knows an Oni named Haryu. The blacksmith asks how he knows her. Later, in the blacksmith shop, he asks if the girl is alive. Jin thinks it's surprising, a coincidence like this. The old man says that day was the first day of the village's traditional festival. All the Onis in the tower were on the 100th floor. Because of his age, he was sick and stayed behind. Then, the village was burned. He asks where Haryu is and if she's safe. Hyuk replies that she's on the 9th floor and they'll meet her soon. The blacksmith asks if that mask is hers. The Necromancer says yes. She said it was payment for saving her life. The Dragon Slayer asks if the girl is strong. The protagonist replies that yes, she's still growing, but in a one-on-one fight, she's probably stronger than them. Hendrik asks if she's just a temporary ally or a permanent member of his group. Cha answers that they're together until the end. He accepted her mask and decided to help with her revenge. Someone touches his hand. It's the old man thanking him. He introduces himself as Geno, the village's blacksmith, and says he'll do everything he can to help, and that he wants to rebuild the village together with her. Jin says to leave it to him. The great spiritual master wonders if he realizes that accepting the mask is the same as accepting her proposal. The blacksmith says he can even take all the weapons from the workshop. Hyuk inspects the weapons and says they're good, on a completely different level than the ones Gold Lich managed to get for himself. Hendrik says, of course, he's the best blacksmith, so naturally the weapons are on another level. And to get going quickly, the Necromancer says they're leaving. Geno stands frozen, saying nothing. The protagonist asks if he fell asleep. The Dragon Slayer says it seems he managed to relax after knowing there's still a survivor, and that he hasn't slept so peacefully since they met. Cha says to let him sleep in peace and that he should bring her here after finding her. He thinks she might gain some strength after talking to Geno and feels happy, until someone calls his name and tells him to be careful. Jin dodges. A huge explosion erupts. He looks annoyed. Hendrik says his reflexes aren't too bad. He remembers saying he'd test him, and if he's not skilled enough to survive, he shouldn't even think about going against divine will. Hyuk tells him not to be mistaken. He'll test him too. Sounds are heard, and attacks happen. Everything around them is destroyed in huge explosions. They stand face to face, surrounded by a massive aura. The Necromancer summons his soldiers. Hendrik, with sword in hand, defeats them all easily, until several daggers approach his back. But the Dragon Slayer blocks them, saying they're useless tricks. The protagonist moves quickly, approaching with his weapon, towards Hendrik, but he dodges. Cha is surprised and wonders if an all-master's swordsmanship is really that powerful, and thinks that, if he dodged that, the Dragon Slayer doesn't hesitate and attacks. Miho gets worried about his master. Hendrik says that considering his title, that was formidable skill, but because of that trait, a problem will arise. Causing monsters from the 10th floor to appear would bring ineffective strength. Vulcan approaches with his chains and asks if he's serious, and what he thinks of the first spiritual master. He chokes him with the chains, and a weapon is summoned. Gungnir by Jin. The Dragon Slayer grits his teeth, and Hyuk says this is an even stronger magical technique, one that sliced a great orc warrior in half, and more. He launches the technique toward his chained opponent. Hendrik moves his sword packed with absurd mana. Vulcan notices the pattern and thinks it can't be that this sword is... The Dragon Slayer breaks the chains and casts the spell Dispel Magic. The greatest spiritual master tells his partner to dodge it because that sword is dangerous. Hendrik uses the dragon-slaying slash, splitting the technique in half and aiming at the Necromancer, causing a huge explosion. Vulcan worries about his partner until he's struck by the Dragon Slayer, who says he's Cha's strongest soldier. And now there's nothing left to say. This is the end. The protagonist steps forward and says no, calling himself the final boss. He uses his ranged weapon, and Hendrik says not to compare swordsmanship, that his archery is trash. The weapon is still activated, generating magical circles. The Dragon Slayer looks back and realizes it's magic. Jin smiles and hits him. His opponent is wounded. looks down, and begins to fall. Hyuk realizes he landed a critical hit, and now just needs to go all in and finish him. He only managed to bring out the side effects when he used it with the girl, but this time he'll succeed. He puts on the mask, activating its abilities, and closes in on his falling opponent. Hendrik, almost hitting the ground, starts releasing intense flames, and the Necromancer says he missed his chance. He won't go down so easily. The Dragon Slayer says he's strong and asked for a fight, but this still isn't over. He uses Awakened Dragon Charge and says to fight more. The protagonist watches and thinks he can't find a way out. Even if he can see the path using Battle Prediction, he still lacks speed, and if that attack cuts him, he's done. He grabs the fox mask. Miho notices and twitches her ears, and Cha thinks he's going to trust the fox mask. Until the blacksmith wakes up and asks what's going on, if it's that lizard again. The fox pup runs off. Geno asks where it's going and says it's dangerous that way. A massive attack happens, and Miho gets worried about her master. Meanwhile, in the battle after Hendrik summons a dragon, he uses Awakened Dragon Charge until he disappears from the area. Jin thinks he vanished until his opponent returns, and Hyuk backs away, eyes wide. Everything around is destroyed and the sword hits the rocks. The Dragon Slayer wonders if he dodged, thinking that's not a move someone could escape with his current mobility. Then Hendrik notices something. He turns around and asks if that mask is the mystical fox's, and if he's seriously playing with masks. Claws are summoned in the Necromancer's hand. He moves quickly and attacks. The two exchange blows. The Dragon Slayer laughs and says that the mobility and power are incomparable to before, asking if that's the power of the fox mask. The protagonist attacks him. Hendrik dodges and thinks now's the opening. Cha notices the magic in his hand and calls him a bastard in his thoughts, thinking he left that opening on purpose to cast magic. A massive explosion occurs. Jin pulls back and holds on, staring at him and casting the spell. Hendrik watches, grits his teeth in irritation, breaks the spell, and says he's not playing on that team, and that if he can just concentrate a little, a spell like that can easily be... Hyuk approaches and thinks he won't use a weak move at this distance and will finish this with that attack. He's going to use Gyu's ability. Martial combat, all masters, Fox's mobility, enchantment, enhanced strength, spiritual power, demonic energy, and divine power. He's giving it everything in this strike, and says it's over. The Necromancer hits him with all his strength. A massive amount of energy is released in a huge explosion. The smoke clears and Vulcan wakes up, asks if he passed out and who won, until he sees the shadow of his partner standing and calls out to him. Plasma drips from the protagonist's mouth and eyes, and he collapses to the ground, thinking he used everything he had and can't move a muscle. Anne says that Hendrik should be done after that hit. Hendrik is standing with his sword in hand, gravely wounded, raises his sword and says he passed. Cha says no, that he failed, and that if someone uses their final move they should at least faint, and calls him a monster. The Dragon Slayer says it's annoying. Even he himself didn't pass after ending up in this state. Jin says he's irritating. Hendrik says he understands and they'll decide after using his final strike, and that he's starting to like him, so he needs to pass no matter what. Hyuk says to wait because he can't move right now. The summoned dragon approaches him. The Dragon Slayer uses his dragon flower technique, making the dragon open its giant mouth toward him. The Necromancer says he passed and calls him a fucking bastard. Later, elsewhere, two people are arguing about who lost, and if he's calling him a loser, and if he's so confident, Anne tells him to shut up, asking what he said, and if he was going to test him too. The protagonist tells him to shut up and says he'll turn him into a spiritual orb, until he strains too hard and feels pain. Vulcan says he deserved it, and he already told him to be careful. He only survived because he met Uriel and absorbed divine power. Without it, he'd still have that frail body and would have died. Cha says he doesn't stop being annoying, and he'll see when he recovers. The greatest spiritual master says he can't hear the losers whining. The fox pup notices something, and someone says they're coming in. It's Hendrik asking if he's okay. Jin asks if he came. Vulcan gets annoyed seeing him because he remembers him saying he'd tear him apart next time, and says that about what happened earlier, he's sorry. The Dragon Slayer says it's fine. They're all in the same boat now, and they'll leave the past in the past. The greatest spiritual master says that's great and thinks he seemed like a maniac while fighting his partner, but now he looks like a normal person, and apologizes, saying that even though he came there, this guy, Hendrik, cuts him off and asks if he went a little overboard. Hyuk, furious, tells the two of them to fight him, because he'll win next time, and the Dragon Slayer thinks he will someday. The Necromancer says he called him there because he wanted to hear his story about his past life and elimination. Hendrik starts telling that his family and hometown were destroyed by dragons. They breathed fire, burning everyone around, and the reason he miraculously survived. His eyes filled with tears seeing everything that was happening, driven by his deep hatred of dragons. After that, he climbed the tower like everyone else and luckily had talent. The protagonist says he's just like an idiot he knows. The Dragon Slayer says he finally managed to eliminate his first dragon on the 600th floor and started planning his revenge. Cha says the 600th floor was fast and asks if after that he went after the four emperors. Hendrik says yes, but at the same time, the pursuers under the command of the four emperors started hunting him too. Jin says he doesn't even want to imagine what that was like. The Dragon Slayer says that was his daily routine, and the stronger he got, the smaller the penalty. It's not wrong to say their branch on the 800th floor vanished. Hyuk thinks about the penalty and that it's a kind of installment system created so those on the higher floors don't monopolize the tower. Everyone receives a restriction on their abilities on the lower floors. That's why he managed to counter the Gold Lich's attack. If that system didn't exist, he would have died instantly. He tells him to wait and asks which floor he reached. Hendrik replies he made it to the 900th floor. And on the 900th floor, his plan came to an end. The Necromancer wonders if he could have become a transcendent. The Dragon Slayer says that to catch him, an even stronger team from the four emperors came after him. In the end, he couldn't fight against so many of their members and ended up in this state. And it's hilarious. Of all races, he reincarnated into a dragon's body. The protagonist says that's complicated. Hendrik says he wants to be finished off, but it's not so easy to be eliminated with such a strong body. So he decided to accept reality and will use this body as a tool for his revenge. Cha says yes, and that fits his personality. The Dragon Slayer asks when they'll start climbing and if they'll wait for Haryu. Jin asks if they'll climb together. Hendrik asks where else he'd go after leaving him and calls him weak. Hyuk says he really pisses him off. The Dragon Slayer says they're alike, and in his final moments, he was alone, and asks if he was too, and says they failed in their past lives, so they need to learn from them. It's arrogant to think one can go against them alone. The Necromancer agrees and says they need a friend, an ally, a lineage to fight together. Hendrik says then he'll make the offer, and asks why not create a guild. The protagonist asks about a guild. On the 600th floor, base of the Sacred Kingdom Guild, someone walks in complaining and asks what the hell is going on. Kane is watching images of a place being burned and says an interesting report came from the White Swallow branch on the 10th floor. It's in ruins after some guy burned it down, and he did it alone. Carmen asks if he did it alone. Pellin says that according to Beck Hollio's report, he doesn't think so. It must have been some organization or guild that did it. The Saint says that's impossible and that on the 10th floor, no matter how strong someone is, they'll suffer a penalty. Kane agrees and says that applies even to the 9 stars. It's impossible to conquer a guild base after receiving the 10th floor's penalty. So the one behind the attack must be someone with overwhelming power, like they had when they first came to the tower. Carmen doesn't say a word. Pellin says it's still just a theory. The Saint asks what they should do if someone like that really exists. Kane smiles and says of course, they'll use the same method from 10 years ago and eliminate them all. And they'll use a bounty hunter. A good one. Elsewhere, someone defeats a giant monster and says that's another task done for today. It's a girl in a hood. On the 10th floor, the protagonist thinks about the guild and says he agrees with Hendrik. But there's a problem. He's currently on a mission from Baal. He needs everyone in the tower to recognize his name, Ghostface, before reaching the 100th rank, and that'll be a problem if his name or the guild's is tarnished. Hendrik says he understands and thinks about Baal's mission, then says the answer is simple. He should be the guild leader. Cha looks surprised. The Dragon Slayer says he's not even interested in being the guild leader. It's not that he's not competent to take the position, he just sees things differently. And if the Necromancer is skilled, he'll be a great person to lead the guild. Jin says he's mad and still weaker than him. So if he becomes guild leader, there'll be moments where he'll need to give him orders. And asks how he'll accept someone weaker. Hendrik kneels on the ground silent for a moment. And when Hyuk is about to say something, the Dragon Slayer interrupts and asks if that answers his question, and thinks he has no idea the humiliation he went through, how angry he was at being so weak. The Necromancer asks if, for his goal, pride means nothing. Hendrik says yes, and he understands. The protagonist smiles and says to achieve revenge, he'll become the guild leader. The Dragon Slayer says he made the right decision. Vulcan asks what the guild will be called, and Miho gets excited about the idea. Cha remembers when someone said the one who wears the mask of terror and defies the heavens. In the present, he says the name could be Heaven's Rebels, and asks if there's a better name. A voice says that if he pays a fee to the company, he can create the guild, and if he talks to Puppet, he can do it for free. The staff member says he's welcome. Jin says it's true and that Puppet isn't there anymore. And who is he? The staff member introduces himself as Halcyon, the manager of the 10th floor branch. Hyuk looks to the side and asks why Ken came there. The official replies that he thought he'd stop by quickly because of tower maintenance, and it's a great coincidence. Halcyon agrees and says he became friends with him, then asks what brings him here. The Necromancer says he wants to create a guild. The manager says he understands, and if it's a guild created by him, he's sure there'll be a line of people wanting to join. But to establish a guild, there need to be more than 2 members. The protagonist says more than 2 and asks if that's not enough. Ken realizes he's the dragon from Central Street, and Halcyon asks if he managed to recruit him. Cha says he didn't know a guild member was already a celebrity. Hendrik asks what that's supposed to mean. Jin says those aren't all the members, and he still needs to send invites to the rest. And when they're all together, he wants things expedited so they all become members at the same time. The manager says he understands, and that Lord Goldlich told him to support him with all his strength. Elsewhere, Harry is fighting a monster. In another place, the Golden Lich receives a letter and says it's a guild and that he's doing something interesting. Somewhere else, Hyuk releases a soul projectile of 10 fingers along with the separation magic, easily defeating the monsters. Hendrik asks if he also got a quest from the nine-tailed fox. The Necromancer replies yes, and that he thinks he can complete it today. He asks if the pup is enjoying herself. Miho is eating the livers of the defeated monsters. The protagonist says he thinks he'll complete it soon, and then he does. A bright light is emitted. The Dragon Slayer asks what's going to happen to the pup after eating all that. Cha says he didn't expect all of this. An aura continues to be released, and a notification appears saying the nine-tailed fox will return to her original form. Vulcan tells them to look. Jin notices the form is different and tells them to wait, realizing this is Miho's original form. He picks her up. Hendrik asks if he's okay. Baal says the child is cute. The fox replies of course she's his daughter. Hyuk says they're fine. Miho looks at him and asks if he's her dad. Everyone is confused until someone arrives asking about Daddy. It's Hurry. The Necromancer wonders why she had to show up right now. The pup asks who she is. The girl approaches, irritated, repeating the word, Daddy. The protagonist calls out to the fox and asks what's going on. The system notifies that the quest is completed, and now Miho has become his new pet. Cha asks if that's what she meant as a reward for the favor granted. The fox says she's leaving her daughter in his care. Jin says to wait and to resolve this before disappearing. Vulcan asks if congratulations are in order. Hendrik asks if humans give birth to foxes these days. Hyuk asks if they're trying to annoy him. Huri kneels to the ground and says if his daughter is that age, then how old was he when, and says no, and that Orabioni is kind and strong, and having a woman isn't weird, and it must be. From the beginning, she could accept it and move on, and thought she meant something to him, and says she's fine. She repeats that she's fine. The Slayer says she's an Oni woman and must be Harry. He says it's a pleasure to meet her and introduces himself, saying he formed a group with the Necromancer and is under her care. The girl stares at him and starts seeing fireworks, remembering her village burning, people being defeated, children crying in fear, and a man in the middle with horns, flames surrounding him. In the present, she says he's the enemy of her village. Harry draws her sword and attacks, but Hendrik blocks it, telling Cha to say something to her because she must be confused. The protagonist asks if she's serious and if seeing him made her furious, saying everyone has their issues. The Dragon Slayer says she could get hurt, badly. Jin says not to worry, she might surprise him. Hendrik smiles and attacks her, saying he'll treat this as her test to join the Heaven's rebels. The girl is thrown far, causing a great impact. The smoke clears and Harry is still intact and rushes at him again, but the Dragon Slayer blocks her. He says she's got a great spirit, but that's not enough to cut him. He attacks her and the girl says it's too much strength and is thrown again, thinking she didn't expect such a huge gap between them. Her enemy is right in front of her, but she has no strength to take revenge. A man appears and says that bastard is a dragon and that he'll lend his power just this once, and it will give her the power to eliminate this dragon. Understand why it's called the dragon-slaying sword. The aura around her becomes intense, and she charges toward him. Hendrik asks if the sword had an ego and says, that's interesting. Harry approaches him with her sword and tries to strike, but the Dragon Slayer blocks the attack again. The girl looks surprised and realizes he stopped the dragon-slaying sword with one hand. Hendrik kicks her. Harry weakens and kneels to the ground. The Dragon Slayer tells her not to think she has a normal sword, and if she looks at what it's made of, it's stronger than hers. With her head down, the girl thinks about the dragon-slaying sword and asks for power, so much that it allows her to take her revenge. The sword gets excited and says that's how it should be. Then she receives more power. The aura becomes more terrifying and powerful. Hendrik widens his eyes upon seeing the sword's edge, and Harry says this is her revenge for burning down her village, and that she'll avenge all the Oni he eliminated. She attacks, and the Dragon Slayer thinks this power is beyond that child's level. The sword forced this strength onto her, and if this continues, the girl could be in danger. He grabs her sword and tells her to let go, because this power is like a parasite feeding off her, and she's not at the level to handle it. He repeats for her to let go of the sword now. The girl closes her eyes and remembers her village, and gets even angrier, saying she'll let go after eliminating him, and that he's the one who burned her village, and she'll never forgive him. She attacks with her sword, piercing through the entire ground around them. The dragon slayer thinks he understands and wonders if she also hates dragons, how much hatred she has for him that she can't even control herself, and thinks that as someone who's wielded a sword longer than she has, there's something he must do. He needs to make her stop walking down the wrong path, and says this is going to hurt, but he won't eliminate her. Harry looks surprised, and Hendrik attacks with his massive power. The girl stares, surprised, and a huge explosion occurs. She's thrown far, losing consciousness, and in her mind she sees flowers and herself walking, saying it's the forest near the Oni village. Harry sees a ball and someone calls her sister. It's the children asking her to hold the ball for them. She gives it back and they thank her, asking why she was the only one who survived. Harry looks scared and sees flames and them burning, begging for salvation and to live with her. Tears stream down her face and she sees countless bones and voices asking why only her, and Harry wonders why she was the only one who survived. The sword replies that it's because it was necessary, that she must live because she's the only one capable of using the dragon-slaying sword. And even if all the Oni lost their lives, the only way to seek revenge is through her. In the present, a voice says to Rise, because the Oni never forget kindness or revenge. Hendrik looks back and wonders if she can still get up after being hit by his awakened dragon charge. The girl runs with her sword toward him, trying to strike with her weapon. The sword breaks and says it thinks that's her limit, and she needs to get stronger until she can cut even through him, until she avenges all the Oni. The protagonist runs over with Vulcan, asking if they're okay. Hendrik says it looks like she ran out of energy before she could hit him, and thinks it's better to let her sleep. Elsewhere, the girl is still sleeping in a bed, and someone says she looks malnourished, as if she's pushed past her limits many times, and using that sword affected her deeply. The Dragon Slayer asks if she'll try to hit him again when she wakes up. Cha replies probably, and that her story is similar to his, and he must be one of the dragons who attacked her village. Hendrik says he has to endure that resentment. After all, the sins committed by the weapon also belong to its wielder. Jin stays silent for a moment, then calls him. He says he rented the whole second floor and he can make himself comfortable until she wakes up. The Dragon Slayer thanks him and says he doesn't need to do this for him, and like he said, the sins belong to the weapon. Hyuk asks if he thinks he cares about him, and says the girl will only be able to rest properly if he's not around. Later, still in the same place, curtains sway, and Harry continues sleeping until she wakes up. She thinks about that feeling and notices someone in front of her, wondering if it's Orabeoni, but it's not. It's the fox pup saying the horned sister has woken up. The Necromancer asks if she's already awake, and the girl replies yes, saying her mind is full. Miho says, "Daddy's here." Harry feels uncomfortable hearing that and faints. The fox pup asks if she fell asleep again. The protagonist says she might lose her life if she doesn't stop using that nickname. Miho asks about losing a life, whose life it would be, hers or someone else's. Cha replies it's that sister's. Jin asks if they've gathered everything, since they won't be returning to the 10th floor. The girl says yes, and even if the dragon-slaying sword disappears, it always returns, like it's a part of her. Hendrik says all his belongings are organized with magic, so he didn't leave anything behind. Miho calls him Oppa and says she grabbed everything too. Hyuk asks what happened, why she called him Appa instead of Dad. Harry says she taught her, and even if she's a mystical creature, she's still a child, so she didn't know the difference between Daddy and Appa, so she explained it in a simple and gentle way. The fox pup says she likes the word Daddy better. The girl glares furiously at her and Miho gets scared. The Necromancer says each of them will take one of these. It's a teleportation scroll. Once torn, they'll be teleported to the meeting room Goldlich prepared, and he calls them to go. Vulcan says wait, asking what about him. The protagonist says that's right, he almost forgot. He releases his energy and the greatest spiritual master scolds him, saying he already told him not to treat it like something you take in and out of your inventory. The protagonist doesn't even react to that and tells them to go. Elsewhere, they are teleported. Hendrik asks if this is the place. Harry says she never imagined there'd be a place like this on the 10th floor. Cha says this is a space made with magic. It's something only possible with Goldlich's wealth. Then the girl notices something and the blacksmith teleports beside her and says her name. Harry calls him Grandpa and says he's alive. They hug and start crying a lot. Vulcan says they've finally reunited. Jin says that's a relief. Golden Lich says they're late and asks if it's polite to arrive 10 minutes early. Hyuk says he knows what state that Oni was in, and that he should be understanding. Willen says he's gone soft and calls him Endstar. The puppet flinches hearing that and asks if he's not that powerful challenger who was eliminated 10 years ago. The Necromancer removes his mask and says he didn't know he was that well known, and yes, that was him, the guy who was eliminated 10 years ago. Golden Lich says that's all the information he has for now. He closes the book. The puppet raises his hand, trembling, and says, wait, and that the other 4 emperors secretly get rid of those with potential. and among their attacks was the Oni village incident on the 100th floor, and the two present are victims of that, brought back to life. The protagonist says that's right, and the guild's goal is revenge. Heaven's rebels, as the name says, will strike chaos into paradise, the place where they live. Geno thinks he knew the guy was crazy, but not to this level. These people are capable of changing the tower. Later, still in the same place, Willen asks what they plan to do now. Cha asks what a challenger is supposed to do and says they'll climb the tower. That goes for all guild members. They need to get as strong as possible. The only way to fight fire is with fire. Harry calls for her grandfather and asks if he'll climb the tower with her too. The blacksmith replies that he's happy she wants him to come, but he'll act separately. The girl asks why. Geno replies that after seeing she's safe, his heart is at ease, and his anger and motivation are gone. The same should apply to her since she's kind. And if they're together, they'll feel satisfied and their strength will stagnate. Because of this old Oni, the Oni sword can't fall. And to not forget her responsibility and rage as the last of the Oni, he's no longer the Oni called Geno, but just a simple blacksmith. And to never forget her responsibility and rage as the last Oni. Jin calls him Elder Shadowless and says he'll give him another mission. He wants him to build his base on the 100th floor and also investigate the Oni village. Golden Lich says that's no problem and asks if he has someone in mind to be the manager. Hyuk replies that the qualified person is right here. He's the best Oni blacksmith, and since he lived on the 100th floor for so long, he knows its geography and characteristics better than anyone. Willen says that's true and orders Puppet to take the Elder to the 100th floor. The Puppet says he'll escort him. The Necromancer says that since everyone knows what they need to do, should they go? He puts on his mask and says, that's right, Heaven's rebels, and they'll make the tower know their name. 11th floor, safe zone, floor entrance. They enter. The protagonist thinks it's the 11th floor. And this is where it all begins. The bastards who did this to him, now he just has to wait. No matter how high they are, he'll tear every one of them to pieces. A hooded girl walks in behind them, smiling as she watches them move forward. Level 50. A woman asks her partner if he heard the rumor, and he asks what rumor. Ghostface destroyed. A voice wonders if he's already reached level 50 and if that's what they're saying. The guards take battle stances, saying there's an intruder and to eliminate him. Cha tells them to rise. Subjects of the fallen kingdom. His spirit soldiers attack the enemies. Other guards use a surprise attack and go behind him, saying to aim for the Necromancer's body. Voices say that it's not just him. His companions are incredible too. Two girls step in front of the enemies, blocking their path to their master. One of them panics, saying it happened so suddenly and asking where they came from. They exchange several attacks while someone watches from above, clearly annoyed, asking what's going on and why it had to happen just when he became chief. He releases mana into a stone and says, if they think they'll lose like this, they're wrong. He's the regional chief of the guild under the kingdom. Roots rise from the ground, forming a giant monster. The chief says to answer his call, protector golem of his proud kingdom. Vulcan asks if he's talking about a golem. Harry asks if that's not a level 120 monster. The chief confirms it is, and that from the moment it was successfully summoned, the course of battle changed. He calls them traitors to the kingdom and orders his golem to crush all the fools who dared challenge the kingdom's alliance. Until he looks to the side and realizes the dragon slayer destroyed his golem effortlessly. The strongest among them is a dragon. The chief says it can't be his golem. The protagonist appears behind him and chokes him, telling him to look. They're the level 50 branch of Shakarihi. The chief asks if he intends to make Nonstar an enemy. Cha replies no and asks how he could. He says those bastards already became enemies 10 years ago. People comment on Ghostface breaking the climb record. The guild alliance of this floor descends into chaos. They ask if it's true, if Ghostface is really that strong. Jin says things are nearly done here too, and to keep destroying everything, the plan they came up with. Elsewhere, in a crowded place, someone says, to look, isn't that Ghostface and his guild, the ones who attacked the Non-Star Alliance? Hyuk asks what Bal thinks of this, and says it looks like they won't even need to reach the 100th floor. Hendrik says they're spreading information without holding back. Vulcan says they used magic on the 40th floor to erase all traces. Harry asks if they're doing it on purpose. The Necromancer confirms, saying he's tired of digging through their guild for info. From now on, they'll make them come. He opens his status screen and checking his information. He thinks that with this amount, even if common enemies ambush them, there'll be no issue, and even though it's weak, the magic energy and holy power, if someone from an upper floor attacks, it'll become a valuable weapon, and says it's just cheap equipment. The Dragon Slayer says not to be so greedy, and not Kano either. He's got gear made by Muyang, but without upgrades, it'll be hard. The girl gets discouraged and asks if her grandfather is okay. Miho says he made her sister sad. Hendrik asks if he did that. The protagonist says there's no choice. He should go and upgrade her equipment to cheer her up. 51st floor, black market. A place where you can get items hard to find through normal means. Sometimes rare items appear. If something she likes shows up at the auction, he'll give it to her as a gift. Harry gets excited and asks if he's serious, and the fox pup says she is too. Cha thinks he's glad they're enjoying it. He should have bought something for her earlier. A voice asks about shopping and says it's great, then tosses a round object near them, which begins to emit a strong light. Jin wonders if it's a bomb, and then an explosion goes off. He stumbles back coughing, looks to the side, and widens his eyes as he sees a woman attacking. Hyuk dodges, but another huge explosion erupts. The Necromancer thinks that power from a small pistol. He would have been hit if not for the mask's power. The woman asks if he really thinks he can dodge long-range shots. Hendrik approaches with his sword, but the opponent notices and activates a visor. The system responds that it understands. Then lights are emitted. The Dragon Slayer looks surprised to see her wearing a helmet and full gear with a barrier blocking the attack. The woman says to return the shock and strikes. The girls approach. Harry asks how she dares point a weapon at her Orabeoni. Miho says to protect Big Brother. The two attack the opponent together. The woman uses her flight unit to evade both attacks by flying. The girl asks if she can fly, and the pup excitedly says it's an airplane. Several bombs drop near them, open up, and cause a powerful explosion. The two are hit and fall to the ground. The woman says it's the super rookie Ghostface and his group. She came here with high expectations and asks if that's all they've got. Two voices reply, not at all, and it's the protagonist and Hendrik, who strike together with their swords. A voice says that wasn't bad. The woman says it's a shame. She thought this would be simple. The two jump, and the woman says they don't need to be so angry as she has something to discuss with them. Elsewhere, she says her name is Shane and that she's a talented bounty hunter. Cha questions bounty hunter and thinks that means there are bounties on their heads, wondering who among the mere 50 tough floor challengers would have done that. Shane says they don't need to introduce themselves. He's the super rookie Ghostface and his big buddy, the weird dragon, and his fangs. Hendrik draws his sword and asks if those are her last words. The hunter says she changed her mind and asks what they think about a wager, one that could benefit both sides. The Dragon Slayer asks about a wager. Shane says if they win, she'll tell them who placed bounties on their heads. Jin notices something. Hendrik is about to attack, saying he's done listening and it's best to just eliminate her. Hyuk tells him to wait. If she's backed by 9-star or the 4 greats, then their climb, which barely began, will become even more dangerous. They need information and should hear what she has to say first. The Dragon Slayer grumbles. The hunter asks if they have a deal. The Necromancer asks what kind of wager she has in mind. Shane replies that fighting a powerful enemy is always fun and tells them to fight her. Hendrik, surprised, asks if they weren't already doing that. The hunter replies that now it's with conditions. Regardless of who wins, all 3 must stay alive, and they'll only get information if she's still alive. She really doesn't plan to eliminate them. The Dragon Slayer thinks that she's basically saying, I won't kill you, and wonders what she's planning. Shane says she's already at a disadvantage 2 against 1, and Ghostface can't use summons. Hyuk says it's fine, gives his word, and thinks he'll uncover her plans after defeating her. Hendrik asks if that means she just needs to be breathing, even if he cuts off all her limbs. The hunter says to begin, and switches to autopilot mode in helmet mode. She summons an object and starts shooting. The Necromancer dodges and says, it's just a toy. Shane appears at his side and asks if he forgot about her. The protagonist uses his spirit shield. The Dragon Slayer appears behind her, but the hunter activates her visor and vanishes. The two look confused. They strike together with their swords, causing an explosion. Shane, flying, asks what that was, and says their teamwork is pretty weak, maybe because both can handle things on their own. Cha pulls on his partner's shirt and calls him useless, asking if he didn't realize she already blocked the attack. Hendrik calls him useless too and says he should have known she'd strike. Jin tells them to follow her movements. That's an order from the guild leader. The Dragon Slayer says no to be rational and leave it to him. It's the key to victory. The hunter calls them quarrelsome, says she already knows they're both stubborn, and asks if it isn't dumb to ignore her like this. She asks if they've ever heard of an electric truck. She attacks, unleashing a bright burst of lightning. They look up as a massive power is released, causing a huge impact. Elsewhere, a portal opens and the two fall from a great height. Hyuk gets up, disoriented, and thinks thank goodness the emergency teleport triggered just in time. Getting hit by that would have been dangerous. He keeps that teleport for emergencies and it saved them. Hendrik asks if they're going to flee mid-fight and what he's thinking. The Necromancer puts a hand over his mouth. A drone hovers above them and it's her helmet. She has some really crazy weapons and abilities, and he wonders who the hell she is. The protagonist thinks that woman doesn't seem like she's from Earth. Considering this world is connected to multiple worlds and dimensions, she must be from another world. She's probably a climber from a dimension where technology is far more advanced than anything they know. He calls his partner and says that if he truly wants to win, he better listen to what she has to say. Shane flies closer and says she's sure those two idiots are around and asks where they're hiding. Then, she notices something. Cha appears flying in front of her. The hunter says who would have thought he'd show up right in front of her and asks if he came to surrender. Jin replies with a "my bad" and says he's pretty persistent. He uses his soul connection technique, releasing a massive energy. Shane asks what that is, thinking it was one of his trump cards, but it's just a spell to trap her, and says that's insulting, like they're underestimating her. Hendrik suddenly appears and strikes with his sword. The hunter dodges and counterattacks, smoke clears, and she wonders if it was that predictable, then thinks no. There's definitely more to it. The Dragon Slayer smiles and tells his partner he liked that. Shane widens her eyes and wonders if that's a ghost face barrier. Then Hendrik slashes her. The hunter smiles and says, that wasn't bad. Jin gathers power between his hands, thinking that casting spells isn't the only thing a spirit master can do. With his all-master trait, he'll give his friend the most buffs he can. He clasps his hands together and says he'll show what an all-master can do as support. An explosion erupts, and Hyuk gives the order to his partner. The Dragon Slayer flies at high speed to reach her. Shane thinks his speed increased drastically, wondering if Ghostface cast something on him. She begins shooting, telling him to give up. Hendrik dodges the shots and asks if she's retreating now. He attacks and says he won't allow it. The hunter widens her eyes as she sees a massive dragon summoned by her opponent, Thunder Dragon. Lightning bursts out and the Dragon Slayer strikes her with his sword. Shane stands and says he walked right into it. Her gift for him who pushed her that far is a nuclear mine. The Necromancer worries about his partner and a bright light explodes, triggering an extremely powerful blast. The protagonist approaches and asks what kind of hellish world she came from to have stuff like that, until he gets shot by the hunter, who says it's checkmate. The dragon can't fight anymore, and with Ghostface injured, he's the only one left. Cha says, we'll see, and adds that he forgot to warn her, but his partner is really persistent. Shane asks if they weren't taking her seriously until now. Hendrik wants to know how she dares force him into this hideous form. He takes on a dragon body and breathes flames. The hunter says the strongest person in the tower is truly on another level, but she still hasn't gone all out either. She begins summoning attack devices and uses full power fire, causing explosions, but the dragon stands his ground and asks if she brought those toys to swat a fly. He stares at her and says they promised not to kill her, so don't make him break that promise. Hendrik breathes fire, and Shane asks if he really thinks she can't block it. She activates her max power shield, and the Dragon Slayer unleashes an extremely powerful blast, causing another explosion. Jin, behind a tree, says even using divine power, his recovery is very slow, and wonders if he was hit by some special bullet. He thinks that before his partner transformed, all his buffs and defensive skills vanished, like his existence disrupted the mana around him. The hunter sits on top of the dragon and says they're really strong. She activates her clone ability and asks if everything's good now. Multiple clones surround him. Hendrik says he should be the only one able to control the mana in this area. Shane says, this isn't magic, it's science. A dragon known for mastering mana can't do anything against it, especially since weapons are all physical substances. She begins shooting him. The Dragon Slayer stares her down, rises up, releasing a massive amount of energy and says that no matter how long she keeps shooting those little things, it's useless. Something crashes into the ground. It's her massive weapon. Hendrik looks at it and asks if now she's serious. The hunter replies yes. It's her strongest, most overpowered weapon that she avoids using as much as possible. The Dragon Slayer unleashes his full power and says he'll go all out too. He summons a magic circle and releases a massive amount of flames as his opponent attacks with her giant weapon. Both strike at the same time, triggering another explosion. Hendrik is hit and Shane smiles when she sees it. The impact is so great that it's visible even from afar. The massive shockwave, loud sounds, smoke clearing, and Shane activates a shield, saying that this antimatter bomb is exactly why she never uses it. The system notifies energy overheating during shield use, normal functions impossible to maintain. She says it's fine, that it did its job, and she can rest for now, until she looks, startled, and sees her opponent still standing, asking if he's seriously still able to fight. But then the Dragon Slayer begins to dissolve and collapses to the ground. Shane laughs, saying who would have thought she'd actually manage to defeat a dragon. Then a voice asks why she's letting her guard down. The protagonist steps forward and says it's 2 against 1, asking if she already forgot, because he's still here. The hunter says that for someone with a hole in his chest, he sure talks a lot. She asks if he thinks that pretty face under the mask is going to fix this situation, and says the weapons she has now are enough to eliminate him, asking if he shouldn't just admit defeat. Cha replies that actually, it only ends when he says so. The hunter wonders if he ate a scale. Wings and horns sprout from Jin's body, and he says they really do need the information she has, even if it costs a bit. Shane senses it, this feeling, the power of dragons. Hyuk realizes that's why dragons are considered mana masters. It feels like he could do anything. And yes, there's that too. The magic circles. The hunter looks shocked. The necromancer grins ominously, summoning a massive weapon and aiming it at her. Shane clenches her teeth, and the protagonist says, "Fire at will." The hunter, alarmed, says this spell is on the same level as dragons, and wonders how. Was Ghostface also a dragon? No, she thinks. The energy completely changed after he ate his partner's scale, and wonders if he can use the powers of what he eats. Cha approaches and says she took too long to figure it out. Shane uses her lightsaber to block the attack. Jin asks if there's a problem, saying she seemed all fired up just a moment ago, and where's that mighty bounty hunter now? The hunter says this is insane for someone just from the 50th floor, but fine, she'll play his little game. She uses her chimera electric cannon. Hyuk laughs and says she's doing great. Let's see who's stronger. Shane thinks this can't be, wondering if he can use a dragon's breath too. The necromancer unleashes power from his mouth, hitting her and sending her flying, knocking her unconscious. Smoke moves, and the protagonist spits out plasma and the piece of dragon he had swallowed earlier, thinking it's still hard to use that power as if it were his own. And he needs more training when he has time. Still, he wonders what to do now. Shane opens her eyes and says her body hurts like hell. The Dragon Slayer says she finally woke up. They were wondering when she would. The hunter asks if he regained consciousness before she did. She looks around and asks where they are. Cha replies it's a barrier, they passed out, and the entire area was destroyed, so he couldn't just leave. Shane laughs and asks if maybe they went a bit overboard and says that either way she completely lost. Even if she thought she could win, well, there's a certain monster strong enough to steal power from the four greats, so there was no way. Jin says it sounds like she underestimated them. Hendrik asks, thinking about it now, why they even made that bet in the first place. The hunter replies it's because she wanted to fight a dragon and couldn't miss the chance. Hyuk asks what? The Dragon Slayer asks if they went through all of that just for that reason. Shane replies that he's the dragon from floor 0, and of course, she'd want to know who's strongest. Hendrik says he's speechless. The necromancer says he's not and tells her to say something. To maintain that barrier, he used every mana stone he got from eliminating monsters. Anyway, now that she's awake, she needs to hold up her end of the deal. What's the name of the person who put a bounty on them? The hunter says, first, there's something she needs to say. It wasn't just one person who sent her after them. The group that placed the bounty on them was the Guild Association. The necromancer wonders, seriously? The Dragon Slayer asks what the hell this Guild Association is. Hendrik asks if he knows about the penalties and explains that a climber from the higher floors has limits on what they can do on the lower floors. So they bypass that by supporting and taking over a low-rank guild. These guilds then control guilds from even lower floors. It's through this chain reaction that they stabilize power. That's what a guild association is. The Dragon Slayer says there aren't many powers like that in the tower. If they investigate a bit, they might figure out who's behind it. The protagonist interrupts and says, it's not necessary. There's only one person capable of managing power that large. He remembers someone and says, Guild Association, Sacred Kingdom, 9-star Kane Pellin, only him. Elsewhere, Kane thanks everyone for coming. 9 stars. The Holy Sword says she knows exactly why he called them, and heard that a guild affiliated with the precious Sacred Kingdom was attacked. The Archmage asks if it was him, Ghostface, the strongest climber on the 50th floor. The Poison King asks about the 50th floor and whether they were affected by someone so inferior.